Don't move. Don't make a sound. Just stay down. That was all Ryan Walker said before he threw his body over a woman he had never met, a woman whose name he didn't even know, and felt the bullet tear through his shoulders like fire ripping through paper. He didn't think, he didn't calculate the risk. He just moved. And in that single impossible second, a quiet mechanic from a desert town nobody cared about changed the course of his entire life. If this story moves you, subscribe, drop a comment with the city you're watching from, and let's see how far this story travels together. The night it happened, Ryan Walker wasn't supposed to be there. He had planned to eat at home. He had planned to heat up the leftover chili his father made on Sunday, sit in front of the television, and fall asleep before 10. That was his life. Quiet, predictable, safe. But his father's prescription ran out, and the pharmacy in Ridgecrest was the only one still open past 9. And Millie's Diner sat right next door to the pharmacy, and Ryan had skipped lunch because the transmission job on Earl Hutchins' old Harley had run 6 hours longer than expected. And by the time he walked out of that pharmacy with his father's heart medication in a paper bag, his stomach was growling loud enough to embarrass him in an empty parking lot. So he went in. He chose the counter seat closest to the door, the one he always chose when he ate alone, because it gave him a clear view of the lot outside and he liked watching the highway. Not because anything interesting ever happened on Route 17 after 9 at night, just because it felt peaceful. The long stretch of asphalt, the headlights of trucks passing through, the whole world moving somewhere while he stayed still. Marie, the waitress who had worked Millie's for 11 years, brought him coffee without asking. That was the kind of place Millie's was, the kind of town Ridgecrest was. "Grilled cheese tonight?" Marie asked, pen already poised. "Yeah," Ryan said, "and the tomato soup. Cold front coming in. Already feels like it." That was the extent of the conversation. Ryan wrapped both hands around his mug, stared out the window at the empty road, and thought about nothing in particular. The transmission job, the water heater at home that had been making a sound, whether his father had eaten enough today. Ordinary things. The bell above the diner door rang at 9:47. He knew the exact time because he glanced at the clock on the wall when the cold air rushed in. A reflex, not curiosity. She walked in like someone who was trying very hard not to be noticed. That was the first thing Ryan registered. Not her face, not her hair. The way she moved, pressed close to the wall, eyes sweeping the room in one fast arc before she chose the booth farthest from the windows. She slid in with her back to the wall, coat still on, bag pulled tight against her chest. Ryan looked away. He was not the kind of man who stared, but he noticed. He always noticed things. It was a mechanic's habit. The small sounds, the small signals, the things that didn't fit the pattern. The engine that ran almost right but not quite. The bolt that looked secure but wasn't. She looked like a bolt that wasn't secure. Marie appeared at her table. Ryan watched the exchange from the corner of his eye. The woman shaking her head at the menu, pointing at the coffee pot, her hands moving too quickly. Nervous hands, hands that couldn't be still. She was maybe 28, maybe 30, blonde hair pulled back in the kind of way that suggested she had done it fast, without a mirror. Her face was pale in the harsh fluorescent light of the diner, but it wasn't the pallor of sickness. It was the pallor of fear that had been sitting in a person's body for too long, settling into the skin the way cold settles into old bones. Ryan picked up his coffee, put it down. He told himself it was none of his business. He told himself that a lot. He picked up the laminated menu card and pretended to study it, even though he already knew every item on it by heart. She was watching the door. Not once, not twice, constantly. Every time a car passed on the highway outside, her eyes snapped to the window. Every time headlights swept across the glass, her shoulders went tight. Her coffee sat untouched. Her hands were wrapped around the mug, but she wasn't drinking. She was gripping it the way a person grips something when they need to hold on to anything at all. Ryan set down the menu. He caught Marie's eye across the counter. Marie gave him a small, almost imperceptible look. The look that said, "I know, I see it too. I don't know what to do about it either." He made a decision, not a dramatic one, not one that involved any calculation of risk or consequence. Just the same quiet instinct that made him stop on the side of the road when he saw a car with its hood up, or leave an extra 20 under his coffee cup when Marie looked like she'd had a long shift. He picked up his coffee and walked to her booth. She saw him coming and her entire body went rigid. Her hand disappeared under the table. Ryan stopped, held up both hands, palms out. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to bother you. He kept his voice low and even, the way he talked to engines he wasn't sure about. I just noticed you've been sitting there a while and your coffee's going cold. You look like you've maybe had a rough night. She stared at him. Her eyes were blue, not soft blue, the hard, wary blue of someone who had learned the hard way that strangers who offered help usually wanted something in return. I'm fine, she said. Okay, Ryan said. He didn't move. My name's Ryan. I'm a mechanic. I live about 4 miles east of here, and I'm about as dangerous as a speed bump. He paused. I'm not going to sit with you if you don't want me to. You look like you could use someone to sit with, that's all. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then something in her face shifted. Just slightly. The hard edge around her eyes didn't disappear, but it softened by 1 degree. 1 small degree. Claire, she said. He sat down across from her. He didn't ask her any questions. He didn't pry. He just sat there with his coffee and his quiet. And after a few minutes, Marie brought his grilled cheese and set it between them. And Claire looked at it, and Ryan pushed the plate toward her without a word. She took half. They ate in silence for a while. The highway was empty. The diner was almost empty. Just an older couple in the back booth, heads bent together over a shared piece of pie, and Marie refilling napkin holders at the far end of the counter. You don't want to know why I'm scared, Claire said. It wasn't a question. Not unless you want to tell me, Ryan said. She was quiet again, chewed, looked at the window, looked back at her coffee. What if I said you should probably leave, she asked. Her voice was careful, deliberate. Before things get complicated. Ryan tilted his head. Is that what you want, for me to leave? She looked at him for a long moment, and he had the strange, distinct feeling that she was measuring him. Not for threat exactly, but for something else, for the thing he was made of underneath. No, she said quietly. I just think it would be safer for you. He almost said something. He almost made a small joke about how safe was overrated in a diner at 10 at night. But then he saw it, the black SUV. It had pulled up outside so slowly, so quietly that he almost missed it. No lights. It coasted into the far edge of the parking lot and just sat there, engine idling, facing the diner windows. Claire saw it half a second after he did. She went completely still. Not the tense, frightened stillness from before. Something else. Something worse. The absolute, breathless stillness of an animal that has spotted the predator and knows that movement means death. Claire, Ryan said. His voice dropped. Talk to me. Don't look at it, she whispered. Don't look directly at it. What is... They found me. Her voice didn't shake, which somehow made it worse. I was so careful. I thought I lost them in Flagstaff. I thought... She stopped, took 1 breath. There's a back door, through the kitchen. If you go now... Stop, Ryan said. She blinked. I'm not leaving, he said. You don't understand what these people... It doesn't matter. Ryan. Her voice cracked on his name just slightly. You don't know who they are. You don't know what they'll do. This isn't your problem. This was never your problem. He looked at her. He thought of his father at home, asleep in front of the television, with the heart medication sitting on the kitchen counter. He thought of the motorcycle shop, the smell of grease and steel, the ordinary steady rhythm of his ordinary life. Then he looked at Claire's face, and he said, quietly, get down, because the window of the SUV was rolling down. It happened in fragments after that. Not slow motion, faster than thought. The glint of metal at the window, Marie screaming somewhere to his left, the older couple in the back knocking over their pie. Ryan's body moving before his brain finished processing the decision. His hand grabbing Claire's arm, pulling her down below the level of the table, and then the crack of the gunshot and the shattering of glass and the white-hot impact of something tearing through his left shoulder that spun the whole world sideways. I didn't let go of Claire. He held on. Even as his shoulder lit up like something was burning through it from the inside, even as his body hit the floor and the linoleum was cold under his cheek, he kept his arm around her, kept her pressed down, kept himself between her and the window. The SUV tore out of the parking lot with a scream of tires on asphalt. Silence. The kind of silence that comes after violence. Not peaceful, but shocked. The silence of a room trying to remember how to breathe. Ryan lay on the floor and stared at the ceiling and thought, with a peculiar calm, I'm going to need to find someone else to finish Earl's transmission. Oh God. Claire's face appeared above him. Her hands were on his chest. Oh God, Ryan, you're hit. I know, he said. His voice was surprisingly steady. It's my shoulder, I can feel my hand. That's good, that means... He took a breath. That means it's not... Stop talking, she said, and her voice broke completely, all the carefully controlled fear in it pouring out at once. Stop talking and stay still and... Marie, call 911 now. He stared up at the water-stained ceiling of Millie's diner and listened to Claire's voice calling for help with an urgency that had nothing practiced about it, nothing calculated. Real fear, real distress. The kind of person can't manufacture. He had taken a bullet for a stranger. He didn't know yet that the stranger's father was the most feared biker in the state of Arizona. I didn't know yet that one quiet choice in a roadside diner, the kind of choice that started with a cold cup of coffee and half a grilled cheese sandwich, was about to tear his entire life apart at the seams and rebuild it into something he would never have recognized. He just lay there on the cold floor, with Claire's hands pressing against his shoulder and Marie's voice breaking through the 911 operator's questions and the distant sound of the highway beyond the shattered window, carrying the whole world somewhere else. Stay still, she had told him. He thought he could manage that much. He thought that was the hard part. He was wrong about that. The ambulance came in 11 minutes. Ryan knew this because he counted, not deliberately. His mind just kept moving, kept measuring, the way a mechanic's mind does when it has nothing productive to focus on. 11 minutes from the sound of the SUV leaving to the sound of sirens on Route 17. In those 11 minutes, a lot happened. Marie locked the front door and turned off the exterior sign. The older couple in the back, he later learned their names were Frank and Dorothy Okafor, married 41 years, retired school teachers from Tucson, on their way to visit a grandchild, sat very still and very close together and didn't make a sound. Marie brought a stack of clean dish towels and pressed them to Ryan's shoulder and said, pressure, pressure, keep the pressure, over and over like a prayer she was reciting from memory. And Claire knelt on the floor beside him with her hand on his chest and said nothing at all. But she didn't leave. He had half expected her to run. He had thought in the first haze of pain and shock that she would take the opening, the chaos, the distraction, and slip out the back the way she had suggested he do, disappear into the Arizona night before anyone could ask her questions. She didn't. She stayed on her knees on that linoleum floor, and she pressed her forehead down for just a moment, just one moment, against the back of his uninjured hand, and he felt the warmth of it and heard the sound of her breathing and understood that she was not composed. She was falling apart at a speed she was trying very hard to control. You're an idiot, she said softly, without heat. Probably, he agreed. Why did you do that? I thought about it. I don't know. Seemed like the thing to do. She made a sound that was almost a laugh and completely wasn't. You don't even know me. I know your name, he said, and I know you were scared, and I know you didn't ask for any of this. He paused. That seemed like enough. She looked at him for a long time, and he watched something move through her face, something complicated and layered and old, the way grief is old when a person has been carrying it for too long. My father is going to want to meet you, she said. He almost asked why. He almost said something light about how he hoped her father liked mechanics, or some other small joke that would have made the moment less heavy. But then the sirens pulled into the parking lot, and blue and red light strobed through the shattered window across the ceiling, and the moment was gone. The paramedics came in fast. Ryan answered their questions clearly and concisely. Mechanics' habit again, diagnosing the problem rather than catastrophizing it. GSW to the left shoulder, no loss of feeling in the hand. Pain was manageable. He could breathe fine. When they moved him to the gurney, he looked back at Claire. She was standing by the counter, arms wrapped around herself, watching him with an expression he couldn't read. The controlled fear from before was gone, replaced by something rawer, more open. She looked like someone who had just realized that her decisions had consequences that extended beyond herself. "You're going to be okay," she said. He wasn't sure if she was talking to him. "Come find me at the hospital," he said. It was a straightforward request. No hidden meaning, no strategy. He just wanted to know she was all right. That was the whole of it. She pressed her lips together, nodded once. He didn't know then whether she would come. He spent the ride to Ridgecrest General with his eyes open, watching the dark desert sky outside the ambulance window, the stars scattered across it like a drop cloth for the universe. And he thought about the moment before the shot, the moment when he had seen the window rolling down. He had known, in that instant, with absolute clarity, what was about to happen. He had processed it completely. The angle, the distance, the trajectory, the woman beside him who couldn't move fast enough on her own. And he had moved, not heroically, not dramatically. He had moved the way he moved when he saw a tool falling towards someone's foot, or a car rolling backward toward a wall. The purely physical response of a man who saw a problem that needed solving and his body being the solution. Lynn had not thought he might die. He had thought, she can't get out of the way in time. That was the whole of it. That was the thing that would take him months to understand about himself. That in the space between one heartbeat and the next, with a gun pointed at a woman he'd known for 40 minutes, he had performed the most accurate moral calculation of his life, and the math had come out completely simple. He was bigger. He was closer. It was the only variable that could change the outcome. So he changed it. The surgeon at Ridgecrest General was a practical woman named Dr. O.C. who told him, with minimal ceremony, that the bullet had passed through the muscle and missed the bone and the brachial artery by what she described as an uncomfortable margin, which he took to mean closer than anyone would like, but not close enough to matter. "You'll have full use of the arm," she said. "Good," he said. "I need it for work." She gave him the look that medical professionals give people who respond to near death with logistical concerns. "You're going to need to stay for observation. And I imagine the sheriff's department is going to want a word." I figured, "Is there someone we should call?" He thought of his father, at home, asleep in front of the television. "Yeah," he said, "my dad." His father, Robert Walker, arrived at Ridgecrest General at 2 a.m. wearing his bathrobe and one good shoe and one slipper, because that was apparently what happened when you woke a 67-year-old man out of a dead sleep with a phone call that started with, "Dad, it's Ryan. I'm okay, but..." He sat down in the chair beside Ryan's bed and looked at his son for a long moment without speaking. Robert Walker was not a small man, but he had gotten smaller in recent years. Illness had done that. The slow compression that came with the heart condition, the way it had whittled him down, taken some of the mass from his shoulders. But his eyes were still the same steady gray they had always been. Mechanic's eyes, the eyes he had passed down to his son. "Shot," he said finally. "Yes, sir." "In the shoulder." "Yes, sir." "In a diner." "Yes." Robert was quiet for a moment. "Were you at least eating something good?" Ryan, despite everything, almost smiled. "Grilled cheese." Robert nodded slowly. "Your mother always said that diner had good grilled cheese." He looked at Ryan's shoulder, at the bandaging, at the IV line in the back of his hand. "The woman you pushed out of the way." "She's fine," Ryan said. "She stayed. Until the ambulance." "Did she?" "She did." His father was quiet again. In another man, the silence might have been judgment. In Robert Walker, it was the thing he did when he was thinking carefully about something he wanted to say right. "You always were like that," he said finally. "Even when you were small, you couldn't stand it when something was wrong and you could fix it." His voice was rough at the edges, the way it got when he was keeping something contained. "Your mother used to say you were going to give her a heart attack long before the cardiology could give me one." Ryan looked at him. "Dad." "I'm not angry," Robert said firmly. "I want to be clear about that. I'm not angry, and I'm not going to sit here and lecture you about being reckless, because that's not what it was, and we both know it." He reached over and put his hand on Ryan's uninjured arm. "I'm just going to sit here for a while, if that's all right." "Yeah," Ryan said, "that's all right." They sat together in the quiet of the hospital room while the machines beeped their steady rhythms and the corridor outside stayed mostly empty in the deep middle of the night. At some point, Ryan closed his eyes. At some point, he wasn't sure how much later, he heard the door to his room open. He didn't open his eyes immediately. He was half conscious, that underwater state between sleep and waking, and he heard his father's voice say quietly, "He's resting." And then a woman's voice, Claire's voice, said, "I know, I needed to see that he was actually okay." A pause. "He is," his father said. "He'll complain about missing work for a week, but he'll be fine." Another pause. "I'm Claire." "Robert." A beat. "You're the one he pushed out of the way." "Yes." Something in his father's voice shifted. Not accusation, not warmth exactly. Something more careful than either. "Are you safe right now? Are they going to come back tonight?" I don't know," she said honestly. "I don't think so, but I don't know." "All right," Robert said. "Then you should sit down." Ryan didn't open his eyes. He kept his breathing slow and even, not to deceive them, but because he understood, with a clarity that surprised him, that whatever was happening in that room was happening between his father and this woman, and it was important, and his presence would complicate it. He listened to the sound of a chair being pulled closer. He listened to the quiet of two people sitting together in the dim room, watching him sleep, and he thought, this is not over. He didn't know how he knew. He just knew. The way he knew when an engine that sounded fixed wasn't quite fixed. The way he knew when a road that looked clear wasn't quite clear. The thing that had walked into Millie's diner with Claire Bennett had not been solved by the sound of a departing SUV. It had not been resolved by 11 minutes in an ambulance and a surgeon named Dr. Osei. It had only just begun, and somewhere in Arizona, on a road he didn't know yet, in a building he'd never seen, someone was making decisions that would determine whether Ryan Walker's life would ever be simple again. He didn't know that yet. He lay in the hospital bed with the medication pulling at the edges of his consciousness, and he listened to his father's steady breathing and the soft, controlled sound of a woman trying very hard not to cry, and he thought about a bullet moving through the air in the space he had crossed. He thought about the math. He thought about how simple it had been. He thought, I'd do it again. And that, as it turned out, was exactly the problem. The sheriff's department that came at 8 in the morning. Deputy Karen Ostrowski was professional, thorough, and deeply skeptical of the story Ryan told her. Not because she thought he was lying, but because she thought the story itself was unlikely. A random shooting at a roadside diner. An unknown assailant in an SUV. A victim who had no known enemies, no criminal record, no connections to any organized criminal enterprise. Did the woman, Claire, did she tell you why she was targeted? Ostrowski asked. No, Ryan said. Did she seem to know who was shooting at her? Ryan paused, one beat too long, and he knew it. And he knew that Ostrowski clocked it. She was scared him, he said. She knew something was wrong. I don't know what she knew specifically. Uh-huh. Ostrowski wrote something in her notepad. And where is she now? He didn't know. Claire had been gone when he woke at 7. His father was still in the chair, asleep now, head tilted back, snoring with the specific rhythmic intensity that Ryan had been hearing for 32 years. But the second chair was empty, and there was no trace of Claire Bennett in the room, except for a small piece of paper folded in quarters on the bedside tray. He hadn't unfolded it yet. He had planned to read it after the deputy left. I don't know where she is, he told Ostrowski, and that was the truth. After she left, he unfolded the paper. 4 words written in a precise, controlled hand that nonetheless showed traces of pressure, the indentations of someone pressing too hard on the pen. This isn't over yet. He stared at it for a long time. Then he folded it back up and put it in the breast pocket of the hospital gown, against the left side of his chest, and lay back against the pillow and looked at the ceiling. His shoulder ached with a deep, grinding constancy that he was learning to breathe around. His father slept. The monitors beeped. Somewhere out there, on a road he didn't know, a woman named Claire was moving through the Arizona morning with the kind of fear that had settled in so deep it had become part of her posture, part of her breathing, part of the way she held her bag against her chest. And Ryan Walker lay in a hospital bed with 4 words folded against his heart, and understood with the quiet certainty of a man who had never once in his life walked away from something that needed to be fixed. He was going to have to find out what those words meant. One way or another, Ryan was discharged from Ridgecrest General 36 hours after he was admitted. Dr. O.C. gave him a list of instructions he already knew he wasn't going to follow completely. Limited use of the left arm, no heavy lifting, follow-up appointment in 10 days, physical therapy referral. He nodded at all of it, but he folded the papers and put them in his jacket pocket next to Claire's note. He helped his father into the passenger seat of the truck, and he drove home with one good arm and the particular silence of a man who has too many thoughts to pick just one. His father didn't push. Robert Walker had never been a man who filled silence with noise for the sake of it. He sat with his hands folded in his lap and watched the desert go by outside the window. And once, somewhere around the 12-mile marker on Route 17, he said, "The note she left you, what did it say?" Ryan kept his eyes on the road. 4 words. 4 words, Robert repeated. Good 4 words or bad 4 words? Neither. Ryan paused. Just true ones. His father nodded slowly. She's in a lot of trouble. Yes, sir. And you're going to end up in the middle of it. It was not a question. Ryan didn't answer it like one. I'm already in the middle of it, he said. That happened the second the glass broke. Robert was quiet for a moment. I know. He turned to look at his son's profile. I'm not asking you to walk away. I know you won't. I'm just asking you to be careful. Because careful is the one thing you sometimes forget to be. Ryan drove. The house looked exactly the same as it always did. It had never looked more strange. He went inside, made his father breakfast, changed the dressing on his shoulder with more difficulty than he expected and less complaint than he allowed himself, and then sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and stared at the 4 words folded in his hand. This isn't over yet. He knew that. He had known it lying on the hospital bed listening to the monitors. He had known it in the truck on the way home. He had known it every moment since the glass in Millie's front window had come apart. What he didn't know was what to do with the knowing. He was a mechanic. He fixed things with his hands, with tools, with patience and precision. He was not a man with connections or leverage or any particular understanding of the criminal world. He knew engines, he knew steel, he knew the particular language of broken things that wanted to be fixed. He did not know how to find a woman who didn't want to be found. He didn't have to. She found him. It was 3 days after he came home. He was in the shop. He had disobeyed Dr. Osei's instructions on day 2 because standing still made him feel like he was waiting for something bad to happen and doing something with his hands, even with one arm, mostly useless, was the only way he knew to think clearly. He was sorting parts with his right hand, catalog open on the workbench, when the shop door opened and someone came in who wasn't a customer. He knew that immediately. Customers opened the door tentatively with the uncertain energy of people entering a space that was unfamiliar. This person opened the door like they owned it. Ryan turned around. The man standing in his shop was not a man who would ever go unnoticed in any room. He was perhaps 60, perhaps older, but the kind of older that suggested a body that had taken a great deal of punishment and decided to remain standing out of stubbornness. Big through the shoulders, a face that was all hard planes and old decisions, gray in the beard, eyes the specific color of flint, not gray, not blue, but the dark struck spark color of something between the two. He wore a leather vest, and on that vest, sewn with the particular precision of something that had meaning far beyond decoration, was the death's head insignia of the Hells Angels. Ryan set down the part he was holding, slowly, deliberately. He straightened up to his full height, which was not insignificant, and he met the man's eyes without flinching, because he was not a man who flinched. "You're Ryan Walker," the man said. His voice was the kind of voice that had spent decades being listened to. "I am," Ryan said. "I'm Victor Blackwood." He paused, watching Ryan's face carefully. "I'm Claire's father." Ryan felt the words land with a particular weight. He let them settle. He looked at Victor Blackwood, at the insignia on his vest, at the posture that spoke of authority, so deeply integrated it had become structural. And he said very evenly, "Is she all right?" Something shifted in Victor's face, almost imperceptible. But Ryan caught it, the way you catch the first small symptom of something you weren't looking for. "She's alive," Victor said. "She's safe for now." "For now," Ryan repeated. "What does for now mean?" Victor looked around the shop, not nervously, not with suspicion, but the survey of a man who had spent his life checking rooms for variables. "Is there somewhere we can talk?" Ryan pulled out the second stool from behind the workbench. He sat on the first. He gestured at the second without ceremony. Right here is fine. Victor looked at the stool for just a moment. Then he sat down. And the sight of this man, this enormous, authoritative, leather-vested man with a death's head on his chest, sitting on a grease-stained mechanic's stool in Ryan's shop, was so incongruous that it almost made Ryan laugh. He didn't. He kept his face steady and his eyes on Victor's. My daughter has been running for 4 months, Victor said. He said it without preamble, without softening. The way a man delivers information he's had to sit with for too long. She found something, information, the kind of information that certain people can't afford to have reach certain places. What kind of information, Ryan asked. The kind that proves a network of people, organized, funded, dangerous people, have been using legitimate businesses as covers for trafficking. Moving people, primarily across the southern border. Victor's voice didn't waver. The flatness of it was worse than any emotion. Claire worked for one of those businesses. She's an accountant, a good one. She found discrepancies in the numbers that didn't make sense until they made a kind of sense she wishes she'd never understood. Ryan was quiet. She came to me, Victor said. When she first found it, she came to me and asked what she should do. He paused, a pause that carried a great deal inside it. I told her to document everything and keep her head down while I made some calls. I was trying to find the right people to bring it to, people I could trust not to make it worse. His jaw tightened. That was 4 months ago. Before I could move, they found out she knew. Someone talked. Someone who shouldn't have. Someone on your side, Ryan said. He said it carefully, not as an accusation, as an observation. Victor's eyes went to his for a moment. Possibly, he said. That's part of what I'm trying to work out. Ryan absorbed this. He thought about Claire in the diner, the way she had watched the door, the way her hands wouldn't be still, the way she had told him to leave before things got complicated. She hadn't been running from strangers. She had been running from the specific, targeted pursuit of people who had resources, impatience, and no interest in leaving witnesses alive. Why did she run? Ryan asked. Why not stay with you? He gestured carefully at the insignia on Victor's vest. You have people. You have the resources to protect her. Victor looked at him for a long moment. Because she was afraid, he said, not of them. What would happen to the people around her if they kept coming? She thought if she was moving, if she was alone, they'd focus on her and leave everyone else alone. He stopped. Something in his face that was not quite pain, but was close to it. She was protecting me. That's what she was doing. My daughter was running through the desert alone for 4 months trying to protect her father. Ryan said nothing. He thought of Claire's face in the diner, when she had told him to leave before things got complicated. He thought of the specific calculus she had been performing. Not how do I survive, but how do I make sure no one else gets hurt? She pushed you away, Ryan said. Not a question. Yes. And you let her, because fighting her on it would have made it worse. Victor looked at him with the first real expression Ryan had seen from him. Surprise, quickly controlled, but genuine. Yes, he said, more quietly. So what happened in the diner? Ryan said. They tracked her. They've been patient, Victor said. More patient than I expected. They let her move for a while, let her think she'd lost them. Then they moved. His hands, resting on his knees, closed into fists and opened again. She made one phone call from a payphone near Flagstaff. One call, less than 40 seconds. They triangulated it. They had people in 3 towns within the hour. He paused. Ridgecrest was the third. Ryan thought about Claire sitting in the booth with her cold coffee, watching the door. She had known. She had already known or suspected or feared, and she had stayed in the diner anyway, because she was exhausted and hungry, and the human body has limits even when the human will doesn't. She told me to leave, Ryan said. Before it happened, she saw the SUV and she told me to go. I know, Victor said. She told me. She was trying to protect a stranger. It's what she does, Victor said, and there was something in his voice that was the most human thing Ryan had heard from him. A father's voice underneath all the rest of it, just a father talking about his daughter. It's what she's always done. She has never been able to walk past something wrong without trying to fix it. He paused. I don't know where she gets it from. Ryan looked at him steadily. He thought, I think you know exactly where she gets it from. He didn't say it, not yet. Why are you here? Ryan asked instead. To thank you, Victor said. Then he stopped. That's not, he started again. I came because Claire told me what you did. Not just the bullet, the coffee, the sandwich, the sitting with her without making it a negotiation. She said you were the first person in 4 months who helped her without wanting something back. He paused. She was right about you. Ryan said nothing. I also came, Victor said, because you're in danger. The words dropped into the room with the weight of a specific truth. The people who shot at Claire, Victor continued, they know you survived. They know your name. They found the diner's security footage before the police could pull it. There are people on their payroll who make that possible. They saw your face. They saw what you did. His voice was even, precise. They think you know something. That Claire told you something in those 40 minutes before the shooting. They can't afford loose ends. Ryan processed this. He thought about the past 3 days. Being home, moving around Ridgecrest, driving to the pharmacy again for his father's prescription, eating at the kitchen table, sleeping in his own bed. He thought out how normal it had all felt, how dangerously, deceptively normal. How long have I had, he asked. Since the day you were discharged, Victor said. I had people on your house. You just didn't see them. Ryan felt something move through him that was not quite anger and not quite relief, but sat somewhere between the two. You've been watching my house. I've been protecting your house, Victor said. There's a difference. And you're telling me this now because you need to know, Victor said. Because keeping you in the dark is more dangerous than telling you the truth. And because, he stopped. Something that might have been discomfort moved across his face. Because you saved my daughter's life, and you did it with no information and no reason and no calculation. You just moved. He looked directly at Ryan. A man like that deserves to know what he's standing in the middle of. The shop was quiet for a moment. Outside, somewhere on Route 17, a truck went by with a heavy load, and the walls shook slightly the way they always did. Where is she? Ryan asked. Safe, Victor said. I'm not asking because I don't believe you, Ryan said. I'm asking because she left me a note that said this isn't over, and I'd like to know whether she said that to everyone or just to me. Victor looked at him for a long moment. Something worked behind his eyes, some internal calculation, the measuring of a man he was still in the process of taking the full measure of. Just to you, Victor said. Ryan nodded slowly. All right. He looked down at his hands, one scarred from years of work, one slightly swollen still from the IV line, both steady. So what happens now? I want to offer you protection, Victor said, for you and your father. I can move you somewhere safe while this gets resolved. Out of state if necessary. Comfortable. You wouldn't want for anything. Ryan looked at him. And Claire? She stays where she is while I get relocated somewhere comfortable? Claire is a separate... No, Ryan said. Victor stopped. No, Ryan said again, more quietly. I'm not going to pack my father into a car and drive him to some safe house in another state while the woman I took a bullet for is still out there. That's not... He stopped, chose his next words carefully. I appreciate the offer. I understand you're trying to do the right thing, but that's not something I'm willing to do. Victor stared at him. Ryan held the stare. And then, slowly, something happened on Victor Blackwood's face that was probably not something that happened often. The hard, flat authority of it shifted, not into weakness, into something more like recognition. You understand, Victor said carefully, that the people we're talking about are not reasonable. They are not. This is not a situation where courage is the primary requirement. These are organized, connected, funded people with no compunction about... I understand that, Ryan said. I'm still not leaving. Victor was quiet. My father, Ryan said, he can go somewhere. I'll talk to him. He has a sister in New Mexico. He can visit her for a while. But I'm not going. And I think... He paused, measured. I think you didn't come here just to offer me a safe house. I think you came here because you need something else, and you haven't said it yet. The silence in the shop stretched. Victor Blackwood, leader of the Arizona chapter of the Hells Angels, with the death's head on his chest and the flint in his eyes, sat on a grease-stained mechanic's stool and looked at Ryan Walker for a long moment. Claire trusts you, he said finally, quietly. She doesn't know me, Ryan said. I know. Victor's voice was careful, deliberate. That's why I trust that she trusts you. Claire doesn't. She doesn't extend that to people. Not anymore. Not since she started seeing how the world actually works. He paused. She called me from a gas station payphone 2 hours after you were taken to the hospital. She called me to check on you, not to report what happened, not to ask for help, to check on you. Ryan absorbed that. She hasn't called me to check on someone, Victor said, in 4 months. The words landed differently than Victor probably intended them to. Ryan heard the thing underneath them. The father who had been sitting in the silence of his daughter's absence, waiting for a phone call that was about something other than survival and what it had meant when it finally came. She documented everything, Ryan said. The information she found, she has it somewhere. Yes, that's the resolution. Getting it to the right people, the right authorities. Yes. You have contacts, resources. What's the obstacle? Victor paused. The obstacle, he said slowly, is that we don't know who to trust. The people we've tried to bring it to, twice, both times the information reached the wrong ears before it reached the right ones. There's someone, or more than one someone, managing information flow, intercepting, redirecting. His voice hardened slightly. And the second obstacle is that Claire's physical copy of the documentation, the one she kept separately from the digital file, the backup that can't be hacked or remotely deleted, is not with Claire. Ryan looked at him. Where is it? Victor met his eyes. Millie's diner, he said, and she left it there the night of the shooting. In the confusion, she left a bag. The air in the shop changed. Ryan thought of the chaos after the shot. Claire on the floor, his blood, Marie screaming, the sound of tires. The booth where Claire had sat, back to the wall. Marie has it, Ryan said. Marie has the bag, Victor said. She doesn't know what's in it. But the people looking for Claire, they know she was at that diner. They'll put it together eventually. Maybe they already have. Ryan was already standing up. How long ago did you figure this out? He asked. This morning, Victor said, and Marie's been alone in that diner since. I have people outside the diner right now, Victor said. And the authority in his voice was so absolute that Ryan stopped. She's safe this moment, but it won't last. They're watching the building. They haven't moved yet because they're not sure the bag is there, and they don't want to make a scene before they're certain. He paused. We have a window, not a large one. Ryan stood in the middle of his shop with his shoulder aching and his mind moving fast, the way it moved when a repair had a complication that changed the whole approach. When the thing you thought was the problem turned out to be a symptom of something deeper and bigger and more structurally compromised. He thought of Marie. Marie who had pressed dish towels to his shoulder for 11 minutes. Marie who worked that diner for 11 years. Marie who filled napkin holders at 11 at night because it gave her hands something to do. What do you need from me? Ryan asked. Victor looked at him steadily. Claire will only trust a specific person to retrieve the bag, he said. She won't let my people touch it. He stopped. A beat. She knows there's someone in my organization who talked. Someone who told the people hunting her where she was. She doesn't know who. Neither do I. His jaw set. She doesn't trust anyone in my circle right now, including me on some level. She loves me, but she doesn't trust that the person next to me is clean. Ryan understood that. He understood it completely. But she trusts me, he said. She trusts you, Victor confirmed. Because I'm the only person in this whole situation, Ryan said slowly, who has no connection to any of it. No allegiance, no history, no angle. I'm just a mechanic who bought her half a grilled cheese. Yes, Victor said. Ryan looked at the ceiling of his shop. He thought about the note in his pocket. This isn't over yet. He thought about Claire's voice in the hospital room, telling him he was an idiot. He thought about the specific way she had pressed her forehead against the back of his hand. Just for a moment in the middle of the floor of Millie's diner, while he bled and the night held still around them. He thought about what Victor had said. She hasn't called me to check on someone in 4 months. I want to talk to her, Ryan said, before I do anything. I want to hear her voice and I want to hear her tell me this is what she wants. Victor reached into his vest and pulled out a phone. He held it out. She's been waiting, he said. Ryan took the phone. He looked at it for a moment. One call, already connected, already open, the timer counting silent seconds at the top of the screen. He put it to his ear. Ryan. Her voice was immediate. She had been listening. Hey, he said. A pause. The specific kind that contains a lot of feeling being compressed into a small space. You look terrible, by the way. I saw you when they put you in the ambulance. You watched from outside, he said. I watched from the parking lot. I needed to make sure you were... She stopped. I needed to see them put you in the ambulance. I needed to see that happen before I could leave. He stood in his shop and held the phone and said nothing for a moment because there wasn't anything to say that was as honest as the silence. He told you about the bag, she said. Yes. You don't have to do this, she said. Her voice was the same as it had been in the diner, in the hospital room. Controlled. But underneath the control, something that wanted very much to be allowed to break. This isn't your responsibility. It was never... Claire, he said. She stopped. I'm going to get the bag, he said. Tell me if there's anything specific I need to know about how it's packed, or where exactly in the booth she might have left it, or whether Marie's going to be confused about why I'm asking. A long pause. Back of the booth, she said finally. Her voice was quieter now. It's a gray canvas bag. There's a false bottom. The zipper pull is red, but it's sewn shut, and the actual zipper is hidden under the lining on the left side. The documentation is in a waterproof envelope under the false bottom. Okay, Ryan said. Ryan, a pause. I'm sorry, she said. I'm sorry that you're in this. I'm sorry that I stayed in that diner. I'm not, he said. She was quiet. I mean it, he said. I'm not sorry you stayed. I'm not sorry I sat down. I'm not sorry about any of it. He paused. The only thing I'm sorry about is that you've been carrying this alone. You should have had somebody. The silence on the line lasted a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was different, still controlled, but different in the way that something is different after it's been through fire and come out the other side changed in its composition. Come back safe, she said. Working on it, he said. He handed the phone back to Victor. Victor took it, looked at Ryan with the flat, measuring, flint-colored eyes. Well, he said. She told me where the bag is, Ryan said. He was already pulling his jacket off the hook by the door. He turned back to look at Victor. You said there's someone in your organization who talked. Someone who told them where Claire was. Yes. Do you have any sense of who? Victor's face tightened. I have a list of people who had access to the information. I've been narrowing it, but I don't have a name. Ryan thought for a moment. How many people know you came here today? Victor's eyes sharpened. 3, he said. My most trusted, he stopped. Ryan watched him stop, watched something move through his face that was the beginning of a very uncomfortable realization. 3 people, Ryan said quietly, and you still think this is from outside. Victor stared at him. Ryan put his jacket on carefully, working around his shoulder. Let's go get the bag, he said, and while we do that, maybe think about who those 3 people are. Victor stood up from the stool slowly. For the first time since he had walked into Ryan's shop, he looked like a man who was not entirely certain of the ground beneath his feet. And that, Ryan understood, was probably the most dangerous thing in this whole situation. Not the people hunting Claire, not the bag with the evidence, not the unnamed traitor moving through Victor's organization like a crack moving through load-bearing steel. The most dangerous thing was that Victor Blackwood had just realized that the threat he was looking for might be standing close enough to shake his hand. Ryan locked the shop door behind them both. Outside, the desert was bright and hot and indifferent. Somewhere on Route 17, a car was moving toward Millie's diner. And somewhere in a gray canvas bag, wedged into the back of a corner booth, the evidence that could end all of this was waiting for someone to come claim it. The window, as Victor had said, was not large. Ryan intended to make it count. They took Victor's truck. Ryan didn't argue about that. Victor's truck meant Victor's people. The 2 men who had been parked outside Ryan's shop the entire time, sitting in a plain sedan that looked like nothing at all, which was precisely the point. Ryan noticed them when they pulled out behind the truck, and he noticed that they moved with the practiced, unhurried efficiency of people who did this kind of work regularly and understood that urgency and panic were different things. How many people do you have outside Millie's? Ryan asked. 2 on foot, 1 in a vehicle covering the south exit. Victor's hands were on the wheel and his eyes were on the road. The people watching the diner from their side. I count 3 that my men have identified, possibly a 4th. They're being patient. Because they're not sure the bag is there, Ryan said. Because they're not sure, Victor confirmed. If they were certain, they'd have moved already. The waiting means they're gathering information before they commit. He paused. Which means we have maybe an hour before their patience runs out. Ryan looked at his watch, 10:47 in the morning. Millie's opened at 7. Marie would be in the middle of the lunch prep rush, or close enough to it that the diner wouldn't be empty, which was both good and bad. Good because a crowded diner was harder to move on without witnesses. Bad because any kind of confrontation became exponentially more dangerous with civilians in the room. I go in alone, Ryan said. I'm a regular. Marie knows me. It's natural. My men go with you. Your men go with me, and anyone watching outside sees two people in leather vests walk into the diner with the man who took a bullet for Claire Bennett. Ryan turned to look at Victor directly. How long do you think the patience lasts after that? Victor's jaw worked. He didn't like it. Ryan could see that clearly. The controlled frustration of a man who had spent decades operating from a position of force and was now being asked to sit outside while someone else went in. But he was also, underneath all of it, intelligent. And intelligence was agreeing with Ryan even when authority wanted to argue. You have 5 minutes inside, Victor said. After 5 minutes, we come in, regardless. 10, Ryan said. 7, Victor said. Fine. They didn't speak for the rest of the drive. Ryan used the silence to think through the mechanics of it. Walk in, sit at the counter, talk to Marie. Not immediately, not urgently, nothing that changed the texture of the interaction. Order coffee, let it settle, then find a reason to move toward the back booth. The bag was at the back of the booth, Claire had said. Gray canvas, false bottom with a hidden zipper on the left side lining. Simple, straightforward. Except nothing about the last 5 days had been either of those things, and Ryan had learned enough by now to understand that simple plans had a way of becoming complicated the moment they made contact with the real world. He was right about that. Victor stopped the truck on the street half a block from Millie's. Ryan got out. He didn't look back. He walked at his normal pace, not slow, not fast, the deliberate, unhurried stride of a man who ate at this diner regularly and had no particular reason to hurry. His shoulder ached. He breathed through it and kept his face neutral. The bell above the door rang when he pushed it open. The diner was about half full, 2 booths of what looked like a construction crew on a late breakfast, a young woman with a laptop at the counter. An older man Ryan vaguely recognized from the hardware store, nursing a mug at the far end. The back corner booth, Claire's booth, he thought of it already as that, was empty. Marie looked up from behind the counter. Her face when she saw him was a complicated document. Relief followed immediately by something that looked like barely contained anxiety, followed by the professional smoothing over that 11 years of waitressing installs in a person like a second skin. Ryan, she said, her voice was steady, professional, the way voices are when they are working hard to be. Hey, Marie. He sat at the counter, the same stool he always chose. Coffee, please. She poured it without looking at the cup. Her eyes kept going to his shoulder, the way people's eyes went to injury involuntarily, drawn by the knowledge of it even when the bandaging was hidden under a jacket. How's the arm? She said, quiet enough that only he could hear. Manageable, he said. You okay? She set the coffee in front of him and leaned on the counter with both hands, close enough that her voice stayed between them. I've had 3 people ask me about that booth in the past 2 days, she said. People I've never seen before, asking if anyone left anything behind the night of, she stopped. I told them the police took everything. Ryan wrapped his hands around the mug. Did they? They took what I showed them, Marie said. There was something precise about the way she said it. Ryan looked at her. There was a bag, she said, gray, stuffed under the back of the cushion. I found it when I was cleaning up that night, after everyone left, before the police finished. She held his gaze steadily. I didn't show it to the police, Ryan. I don't know why. Something told me not to. Where is it? He asked. My car, she said. Trunk. I've had it there since that night, and I've been scared out of my mind about it every single minute. Her voice didn't shake, but it wanted to. I don't know what's in it, and I don't want to know, but I know it has something to do with that girl, and I know you took a bullet for that girl. So, she straightened up, looked at him directly. Tell me what to do. Ryan thought fast. The bag was in Marie's car, not in the booth, which meant the people outside watching the diner, watching for someone to approach that specific booth, were watching the wrong thing. which was either luck or Marie's instinct, and either way it changed the situation. "Where's your car parked?" he asked. "Side lot, blue Civic. I'm the second spot from the entrance." "Keys?" She reached into her apron pocket and put them on the counter, slid them across with 2 fingers, casual as sliding a check. "I need them back," she said. "That's my only car." "You'll have them back." He closed his hand over the keys. "Marie, the people who've been asking about that booth, what did they look like?" She described them. Ryan listened. Nothing that matched Victor's people. Different physical types, different clothing. These were the others, the patient ones. "If anyone asks about me being here today," he said, "I came in for coffee, that's all." "You always come in for coffee," Marie said. "Nothing unusual about that." He looked at her. "Are you all right?" "I will be," she said, "when whatever this is gets resolved and people stop standing across the street from my diner doing a very bad impression of being casual." Ryan almost smiled. He took a slow sip of coffee, not because he needed it, but because leaving immediately after receiving the keys would be exactly the kind of thing that anyone watching would notice. He sat with the coffee for 3 full minutes. He made brief, unremarkable small talk with Marie about the weather. He heard the construction crew at the booth pay their check and argue good-naturedly about who had eaten more. Then he stood up, left cash on the counter, including a tip that was probably too large, but he didn't care. Said, "See you Thursday, Marie," because Thursday was when he usually came in for the meatloaf special, and walked to the side door of the diner. The side lot was 6 cars. The blue Civic was the second from the entrance. He didn't rush. He walked to the car, unlocked the trunk, reached in for the gray canvas bag, closed the trunk, locked the car, put the keys in his jacket pocket. The whole thing took less than 45 seconds. He turned around. This man was standing between the Civic and the next car over. Ryan hadn't heard him approach, which meant he had been waiting there, already in position, already knowing. I was younger than Ryan expected, late 20s maybe, lean with the kind of stillness that wasn't natural but trained. He was wearing a jacket despite the heat, and the jacket sat wrong on one side, the way jackets sit when something is underneath them on the shoulder. "I'll take the bag," he said. Ryan looked at him. He tightened his grip on the bag, and his mind ran through the variables in approximately 1 second. The man was between him and the street. Victor's truck was half a block away. Victor had said 7 minutes. Ryan had been inside for maybe 4. "No," Ryan said. The man's face didn't change. "That wasn't a request." "I know," Ryan said. The answer's still no. He saw the man's hand move toward the jacket. And then several things happened very quickly. A car, not Victor's truck, a different car, one of the plain sedans, pulled into the lot fast and stopped, diagonally, blocking the exit. 2 of Victor's men came out of it moving fast. At the same time, from the direction of the street, Ryan heard Victor's voice. Not shouted, just raised. The voice of a man who had learned long ago that volume was less effective than certainty. "Luis," Victor said. The young man froze. Ryan had enough time to register that Victor knew him, knew his name, said it with a specific weight, before Victor was standing at the entrance of the side lot, flanked by the second sedan, and the young man's hand had stopped moving toward his jacket. "Victor," Luis said. His voice was flat, controlled. But Ryan caught the thing underneath it. Not fear exactly, but the recalibration of someone who had been prepared for several scenarios, and this was not one of them. "Put your hand back where I can see it," Victor said. Luis put his hand back. He looked at Victor with the specific expression of a man who has been caught in something he cannot immediately explain his way out of. "You're faster than I expected," Luis said. "You were waiting in this lot before we left Ryan's shop," Victor said. There was nothing in his voice. No anger, no shock, no grief, just the flat accounting of a man adding up numbers that have already been added and arriving at the same answer twice. "Which means you knew we were going to the shop. You knew before I told you." Luis said nothing. "You knew," Victor said, "because you are the one who told them where Claire was." The silence in the parking lot had a specific quality. The construction crew's truck was pulling out of the main lot. Marie was inside, behind the counter, and Ryan prayed she stayed there. The sun was high and the asphalt was hot, and Victor Blackwood stood at the entrance of a parking lot looking at a young man he had trusted, and the look on his face was the most terrifying thing Ryan had witnessed since the night the glass broke. Not rage, worse than rage, the absolute terrible stillness of a man who has removed all feeling from the equation because feeling is no longer useful. How long? Victor asked. Luis looked at him for a moment, and then with the peculiar fatalism of someone who has seen the door close and accepted it, he answered. 8 months, he said. Victor's eyes closed. 1 second, 2. They opened again. 8 months, he repeated. They had my brother, Luis said. His voice didn't change. It was not an excuse. He said it the way you state a fact you have made your peace with. They picked him up 14 months ago. They told me what they needed and what would happen to him if I didn't provide it. He paused. I didn't have a choice, Victor. You had a choice, Victor said. You could have come to me. And if I came to it, he paused. I didn't have a choice, Victor. You had a choice, Victor said. You could have come to me. And if I came to you and they found out, you could have come to me, Victor said again. And this time there was something in it that was not accusation, but something closer to grief. That was always the choice. Everything else you decided was built on the foundation of not making that choice. Luis looked at the ground, then back up. Is my brother alive? He asked. I don't know, Victor said, but I'm going to find out. He nodded to his men. Take him. Luis didn't resist. He put his hands behind his back and let Victor's men move him toward the sedan with a composure that Ryan found both comprehensible and heartbreaking. He understood it. The specific exhaustion of a man who has been holding an enormous weight alone for a very long time and has finally set it down, even in the worst possible way. Ryan stood with the bag in his hand and watched the sedan door close on Luis. Victor came to stand beside him. They stood there together in the parking lot for a moment. 8 months, Ryan said quietly. 8 months, Victor confirmed. He knew about Claire's information. He's the one who flagged her to them. Yes. Ryan thought about Claire running for 4 months through the desert alone, convinced that she was protecting the people she loved by staying away from them, not knowing that the person she was afraid of bringing danger to had already been for months, the source of the danger. She needs to know, Ryan said. I know. She needs to know now, not later. Now, he turned to look at Victor directly, because if she finds this out from someone other than you, it will break something between you that doesn't get fixed. Victor looked at him. The flint in his eyes had something different in it now. Something that was not weakness, but was adjacent to the kind of vulnerability that very strong men carry around very carefully because they can't afford to put it down. You're telling me how to talk to my daughter, he said. I'm telling you what she needs, Ryan said. You do with it what you want. Victor was quiet for a moment. Then he reached out and took the bag from Ryan's hand. He looked at it, just looked at it. The gray canvas, worn at the corners, a red zipper pull sewn shut, the thing his daughter had carried for 4 months, the thing she had almost died for, the thing she had left behind in a diner booth on the worst night of her running because she'd been too exhausted and too frightened to think of everything. She's going to be angry, Victor said. Yes, Ryan said. At me. Probably, for a while. Victor nodded slowly. She'll want to hear your voice first, he said. He looked at Ryan with the complicated, measuring look that Ryan was beginning to understand was simply the way this man processed things he didn't have an established framework for. She trusts you more than she trusts me right now. He stopped. That's not easy for me to say. I know, Ryan said, but it's the truth, so I'm saying it. Ryan nodded. Make the call, he said. Let her hear it from you. I'll talk to her after if she wants. But let her hear it from you first. Victor pulled out the phone. Ryan walked to the edge of the lot and gave him space. He stood in the hot morning air with his shoulder aching and his mind turning over everything that had just happened. The speed of it, the compression of revelation. The way Luis's face had looked when he said 8 months with the flatness of absolute exhaustion. I thought about what it meant that the traitor had been identified. It meant the leak was sealed. It meant Claire's location, wherever she was no longer being fed to the people hunting her. It meant the 4-month chase had been running on information that would stop flowing now. But it didn't mean it was over. Victor had said it himself. These were organized, funded, patient people. Losing one asset wouldn't make them retreat. It would make them accelerate. They would know when Luis went silent that something had changed, and they would move. The window, already not large, had just gotten smaller. Ryan turned back. Victor was on the phone. His voice was low. Ryan couldn't hear the words, but he could hear the cadence, measured, careful, with the specific deliberateness of a man who is saying things he has been rehearsing in the back of his mind and hoping he would never have to say. After 2 minutes, Victor lowered the phone. He walked over to Ryan and held it out. Ryan took it. Ryan, Claire's voice. Different from earlier, tighter. The control's still there, but with fractures in it now. Not from weakness, but from too much information hitting at once. The way a structure fractures when the load changes suddenly. Hey, he said. Luis, she said, not a question. Yeah, a long pause. 8 months, he said, 8 months. Yes. That means, her voice stopped, started again. That means the meeting I had with my father in March, when I went to him and told him what I'd found. Luis was there for part of that conversation. Yes. They knew within days, she said, her voice was very quiet. They knew almost from the beginning. Everything I did to stay ahead of them, every move, every city, every time I thought I'd lost them. You had lost them, Ryan said. More than once, from what your father said. They were working with partial information. Luis couldn't tell them everything. He was limited in what he knew, what he could access. You were harder to find than they expected. I didn't know if that was completely true. He said it anyway, because it was true enough, and because the alternative, letting her sit in the full weight of the idea that nothing she had done had mattered, was a cruelty he wasn't willing to participate in. I'm going to be angry at my father for a while, she said. I told him. A small sound that was not quite a laugh, but had some of its texture. Of course you did. A pause. Is it safe now? Is it actually? Not completely, Ryan said. We have the bag. We know who talked. But the people hunting you know something went wrong now, or they will soon. They'll move faster. How much time? Your father thinks hours, maybe less. He heard her breathe. I can get the digital file from the secure server where I stored it. That combined with what's in the bag, that's enough. That's more than enough to take the whole network apart. Who do we bring it to? Ryan asked. Your father said twice before it reached the wrong people. I know who, Claire said. Her voice was steadier now. She was doing what he had noticed she did under pressure, converting fear into logistics, into action, into the next concrete step. There's a federal prosecutor in Phoenix, Diane Alvarez. She's been building a case against this network independently. She doesn't know about me. She doesn't know I exist. She's not in the pipeline that was being monitored. I found her through public records 3 weeks ago. I've been trying to figure out how to reach her safely. That's who we bring it to, Ryan said. That's who we bring it to, she confirmed. Okay, he paused. Claire, yeah. Are you somewhere secure right now? Right this moment? A pause that lasted 1 second too long. Define secure, she said. Ryan felt something tighten in his chest. Where are you? She stopped, started. I've been moving. I thought, with Luis identified, I thought the information pipeline was closed, but they already had a location on me from 2 days ago, and if they moved on that before, Claire, his voice was sharp and low. Where are you? She told him, a motel outside a town called Seco Wells, 30 miles east of Ridgecrest. She had been there for 18 hours, which was too long. She knew it was too long, she said, but she'd been waiting for the call from her father, waiting for some clarity before she moved again. Ryan was already walking toward Victor. Stay in the room, he said into the phone. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone. We're coming. Ryan, stay in the room, he said again. He held the phone out to Victor. Seco Wells, he said. How fast? Victor was already moving toward the truck. 25 minutes, he said, if we move now. We move now, Ryan said. They moved. The drive was 23 minutes because Victor drove the way a man drives when the variable is time and the stakes are absolute. Fast, direct, without aggression, but without hesitation. The way a surgeon moves when the window is closing. His 2 cars followed without being told to. Ryan sat in the passenger seat with his hand on the door and his mind running the variables over and over. The way it ran when he was diagnosing a complicated repair, looking for the thing he hadn't accounted for, the element that would change the approach. The file she has on the server, Ryan said, is that accessible remotely? From her laptop, yes, Victor said. She's had it encrypted and distributed across 3 servers with a master key only she has. They can't get it without her. No, And so they need her alive, Ryan said, for the file, which means the approach changes, Victor said. They're not trying to silence her anymore. They're trying to capture her. Get the key. He paused. That is in some ways more dangerous. Ryan understood that. A threat that wanted you dead had a limited set of approaches. A threat that needed you functional and conscious had more. Your father's here, Ryan said, into the phone that Victor had set on the dashboard on speaker. Or he will be in 12 minutes. I hear you, Claire's voice said. Quiet, controlled. I'm in room 7. The room faces the parking lot. Stay away from the window, Ryan said. I know, she said, not impatiently, but with the exhaustion of someone who has been managing their own safety for a very long time. Ryan, there's a car that's been parked across the road from the motel for 40 minutes. I don't recognize it. It wasn't here when I arrived. Ryan looked at Victor. Victor's expression didn't change. He pressed harder on the accelerator. What kind of car? Ryan asked. Sedan, dark blue. It pulled in and just stopped, facing the motel. Okay, Ryan said. Is the door locked and chained? Locked and chained. Is there a window in the bathroom? A pause. Yes, small. Faces the back. If we're not there in 10 minutes and you hear anyone at the door who isn't us, you go out that window. You don't hesitate. You go. It's small, she said. You'll fit, he said. Is there anything behind the motel? On the other side? Open land, she said. Desert. If you have to go, you go east. You keep the sun behind you. You don't stop. Ryan, her voice broke slightly. Just slightly. The fracture that happens in a controlled thing when the control is stretched past its limit. I'm tired, she said. I'm so tired of running. Something happened in Ryan's chest that he didn't have a word for. He said, 8 minutes, that's all. 8 more minutes, Victor said beside him, without looking away from the road. 7. Ryan related. 7 minutes, Ed. You've been doing this for 4 months. You can do 7 more minutes. A breath, a long one. Okay, she said. Okay, he said. They drove. 6 minutes out, Victor's phone buzzed in his vest pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again. He pulled it out with one hand, glanced at the screen, and his jaw set in a way that Ryan had learned in the past 3 hours was not good. What? Ryan said. My man outside the motel, Victor said. The blue sedan across the road. There are 2 more vehicles. They just pulled in, one at each end of the motel road. He paused. They're boxing her in. Ryan looked at the distance remaining on the map on Victor's dash. 6 miles. Can your man get to her? He's one person, Victor said. Can he get to her? Victor grabbed his phone and made a call with 2 words. Room 7. He hung up. 3 vehicles, Ryan said. He was thinking fast. Front is covered. Ends of the road are covered. But the bathroom window faces the back, and the back is open land. They'll have anticipated. Did they see your man? Ryan asked. The one outside, does he look like he belongs there? Victor paused. He's been there since last night. He's in a work truck. He's been there long enough that he's not a variable they're accounting for. Can he get around the back without them seeing? Victor grabbed the phone again. Another 2 sentences, hung up. He can try, he said. Tell him to get to the bathroom window, Ryan said. Tell him to knock 3 times, Claire. He spoke toward the dashboard speaker. Are you listening? I'm listening, she said, and her voice was tight but clear. There's going to be a knock at the bathroom window. 3 times. That's a person who's on our side. When you hear it, you open the window. Okay, she said. We are 4 minutes out, Ryan said. Okay. Stay on the phone. I'm here. 4 minutes. Ryan watched the distance close on the map and listened to the sound of Claire's breathing through the phone speaker. Controlled, deliberate, the measured breathing of a woman who is managing fear the way you manage a physical task, with technique and intention. He thought about the 4 months she had been doing this, the 40 minutes in the diner before he sat down, the 11 minutes on the floor while Marie pressed dish towels to his shoulder, the note she'd left on the bedside tray, the phone call to her father after, to check on a man she had known for less than an hour. She hasn't called me to check on someone in 4 months. He thought about trust, the thing she had extended to him without calculation, without reason, without a history between them that could justify it. The thing that had brought Victor to his shop on a Tuesday morning, sitting on a grease-stained stool, trying to find a language for gratitude that he didn't have a framework for. I thought about the bag in the back seat, the waterproof envelope under the false bottom, 4 months of Claire's life compressed into documentation, into numbers that proved a truth that dangerous people had spent enormous resources trying to keep unproven. He thought, this ends today. I didn't know exactly how. He didn't know all the variables, but the mechanic in him, the part that had spent 32 years understanding that broken things could be fixed if you had the right tools and the right information and the willingness to work the problem until it gave, that part was absolutely certain. This ends today. 2 minutes out, they heard it through the speaker. 3 knocks. Then Claire's voice, stripped of everything except the most essential human sound. Oh, thank God. And then the sound of a window and movement, and Victor's man's voice saying something Ryan couldn't make out. And Claire's voice saying, I have my laptop, I have it. And then a sound that might have been her dropping to the ground and landing hard and not complaining about it. I'm out, Claire said into the phone, breathing harder now. I'm behind the motel. Keep moving east, Ryan said. Sun behind you. We are 1 minute out. Okay. A sound of footsteps on dry ground. There are people at my door right now. I can hear them. They're a sharp sound like a breath that got cut short. They just broke the door. Keep moving, Ryan said. Don't stop. Don't look back. Keep moving. Victor turned into the motel road, hard enough that Ryan's shoulder hit the doorframe, and the pain was enormous, and he ignored it completely. He saw the dark blue sedan ahead and the 2 other vehicles at the ends of the road, and Victor didn't slow down. He pulled directly in front of the sedan and stopped the truck at an angle that blocked the road, and his door was open before the engine was fully off. Ryan was out his side a half-second behind. What happened next was loud and fast, and Ryan stayed close to Victor's side because he understood his role here. He was not the person with the authority, or the men, or the history that made these confrontations resolvable without bloodshed. Victor was that person, and Victor moved through the next 4 minutes with a cold, specific competence that told Ryan everything about how this man had survived and led for as long as he had. There were words exchanged that Ryan didn't follow completely. There were Victor's men from both sedans now visible and present and positioned in the way that people position themselves when they want to communicate a fact without having to state it. The fact was simple. The fact was numerical. And the people in the 3 vehicles made the calculation that their patience and their planning and their carefully constructed net had just been neutralized by a variable they hadn't accounted for. And they made the decision that most people make when the math changes that suddenly. They left. Not running, not panicking. The specific controlled withdrawal of people who are not finished but are choosing a different moment. Ryan knew that, Victor knew that, but for now, for this moment, they left. Ryan walked around the back of the motel building. Claire was standing 30 yards out into the open land, laptop bag over one shoulder, breathing hard, her hair loose from whatever she'd tied it in when she went out the bathroom window. And when she saw Ryan walking toward her, she made a sound that was completely unlike anything controlled or composed. She walked toward him fast, and then she stopped, 2 feet away, and looked at him, at his shoulder, at his face, at the whole unlikely fact of him standing in the desert behind a motel in Seco Wells, Arizona. And she said, "You came." "I said I would," he said. She pressed her lips together. Her eyes were bright and dry, and the effort of keeping them that way was visible. "You were supposed to stay out of this," she said. "You were supposed to tell me that before I sat down," he said. She laughed. It came out unexpected. Real, the laugh of someone who hasn't laughed in a long time and is surprised by the sound of their own voice doing it. Then it broke into something else, briefly, and she pressed the back of her hand to her mouth and brought herself back. "I have the file," she said. "Everything, the digital and the physical. We have everything." "I know," he said. "And we know who." "I know," he said. She nodded, breathed, looked at him steadily. "I'm still tired," she said. "I know," he said. "You're almost done." She looked at him for a long moment, and then Victor came around the corner of the building, and she turned to look at her father, and the distance between them, the 4 months of distance, the distance of fear and silence, and the specific grief of a daughter who had been running towards safety and away from the people she loved simultaneously. That distance crossed itself in the 3 seconds it took Victor Blackwood to reach his daughter and put his arms around her. I didn't say anything. Neither did she. Ryan turned away. He gave them that moment. He stood in the desert morning with the sun on his face and his shoulder aching with a deep, steady insistence, and he thought about ordinary things. The motorcycle shop, his father's heart medication, the water heater that was still making that sound. He thought, this is what it felt like, to be in the exact right place at the exact right moment for no planned reason and no reward. I thought I would do all of it again. Behind him, he heard Claire's voice, muffled against her father's jacket, say something he couldn't make out. And he heard Victor's voice, rough at the edges, in the way of a man who is keeping something enormous contained. I know, baby, I know. I've got you. The desert was bright and still, and the world kept moving somewhere out on Route 17, trucks and cars carrying people to places they were expected, living their predictable and ordinary days. Ryan stood in it and breathed and let the moment be exactly what it was. And then Claire said louder, pulling back slightly from her father, Diane Alvarez. We need to call Diane Alvarez. Ryan turned around. She was looking at him, eyes clear now, the exhaustion still there, but something else alongside it. Purpose, the specific energizing force of a person who has been running towards something for 4 months and can finally see exactly how far away it is. Do you know how to reach her? Ryan asked. I have a number, Claire said. I've had it for 3 weeks. She paused. I was waiting until I knew it was safe to use it. Ryan looked at her. Is it safe now? Claire looked at her father. Victor looked back at her with the expression of a man who is in the process of rebuilding something inside himself, one piece at a time, and knows it will take a while but is committed to the work. Yes, she said, it's safe now. She took out her phone. She dialed, and Ryan stood in the desert behind a motel in Seco Wells, Arizona, next to the man with the death's head on his vest and his daughter who had been running for 4 months, and listened to a phone ring twice, 3 times, and then a woman's voice answer, professional and precise. Alvarez. Ms. Alvarez, Claire said, and her voice was the steadiest Ryan had ever heard it. My name is Claire Bennett. I have evidence of a trafficking network operating across 3 states. I have physical documentation and a complete digital file. I need to get it to you today. A pause on the line. Ms. Bennett, Alvarez said slowly, I've been looking for you for 6 weeks. Claire closed her eyes. 1 breath, 2. I know, she said. I'm sorry it took so long. Don't apologize, Alvarez said, and there was something in her voice that was not quite relief, but was what relief sounds like when it has been compressed into professionalism. Where are you? Ryan listened to Claire give the address. He listened to the logistics take shape, the arrangements, the protection, the secure transfer of 4 months of running and fear and documentation into the hands of a person who would know what to do with it. He looked at his watch. It was not yet noon. I thought my father is probably wondering where I am. He thought I should call him. He reached into his jacket pocket for his phone and found instead Claire's note, 4 words on a folded piece of paper. He held it for a moment, turning it over between his fingers, and then he put it back. He would hold on to it a little longer. Diane Alvarez arrived in Seco Wells 94 minutes after the phone call. She did not come alone. She came with 2 federal agents Ryan didn't know the names of, a woman who was introduced only as our tech specialist, and a manner so precise and unhurried that it communicated more effectively than any show of force that she had been building toward this moment for a long time and was not going to rush it now that it had arrived. She was maybe 50. Short hair. The kind of face that had decided somewhere around 40 to stop performing anything it didn't feel. She looked at Claire the way a doctor looks at a patient they have been trying to reach for a long time. Not with pity, but with the specific relief of someone who can now actually help. Ms. Bennett, she said, and shook Claire's hand with both of hers. I want you to know that what you've done, the documentation, the risk, you need to understand the scale of what that represents. I need it to be over, Claire said simply. That's what I need it to represent. Alvarez nodded. Then let's make it over, she said. She looked at Victor. Her expression didn't change, but something in it recalibrated. Victor Blackwood in person required recalibration. Ryan had noticed that about him from the first moment. He was the kind of man who changed the weight of a room just by being in it. Mr. Blackwood, Alvarez said. Ms. Alvarez, Victor said. A pause that contained an entire conversation neither of them was going to have out loud. Then Alvarez nodded once and moved on. She looked at Ryan last. "You're the mechanic," she said. "Yes, ma'am," he said. She studied him for a moment with the frank, assessing look of someone who makes professional judgments about people for a living. "You're the one who retrieved the physical documentation." "Yes." "And you took a bullet in the initial attack." "Yes." She looked at him for one more second. Then she said, "Thank you," with a directness that had no performance in it. Not gratitude as a social gesture. Gratitude as a statement of fact. Ryan said, "You're welcome," and meant it equally plainly. Then they got to work. The tech specialist set up in the motel room that Claire had escaped through the bathroom window 20 minutes earlier. The door had been forced and was propped shut with a chair, which nobody commented on. Claire sat at a small table with her laptop and walked through the digital file with Alvarez and the tech specialist, while Victor's men stood outside and Victor himself sat in the corner of the room with his arms folded and said nothing, which was its own kind of presence. Ryan sat on the edge of the bed and watched. I was not needed for this part. He understood that clearly and without resentment. His part had been specific, retrieving what needed to be retrieved, moving what needed to be moved, being present in the moments that required someone without allegiance or history or angle. This part, the legal architecture of what Claire had built, the technical walkthrough of the documentation, the careful procedural work of putting 4 months of evidence into the right hands in the right order, this part belonged to people who knew how to do it. I was content to watch. What he watched was Claire. She had been running for 4 months. She had been alone, frightened, exhausted, surviving on the specific adrenaline that comes from being hunted, which is not the same thing as energy and burns out differently. She had held herself together through sheer force of will and the particular stubbornness of someone who had decided the things she was doing mattered more than her own comfort or safety. And now she was sitting at a table with a federal prosecutor, walking through her documentation with the calm, systematic precision of an accountant who was very good at her job, and Ryan could see, watching her face, watching her hands, watching the set of her shoulders, the gradual incremental release of something she had been holding at full tension for so long that the release itself was almost invisible. Not dramatic, not a collapse, just the slow millimeter by millimeter relaxation of a structure that has been under load and is finally, carefully, being permitted to bear less. After 40 minutes, Alvarez sat back and said, "This is enough." Claire looked up. "More than enough," Alvarez said. She said it with the precise emphasis of a person who does not use imprecise language. "This is, what you've assembled here, Ms. Bennett, is the most comprehensive documentation of this network's operations that we have seen. Names, accounts, transaction records, shell company structures, dates, locations." She paused. "This is years of work for a team of investigators. You did this alone." "I'm an accountant," Claire said. Her voice was even. "Numbers were always the part I understood." "The network spans 4 states," Alvarez continued. 73 individuals directly implicated, 47 more indirectly connected. The trafficking operation has been moving people for 6 years. She looked at Claire with the direct, unblinking assessment she had used since she arrived. "Do you understand what taking this apart will mean for the people who were moved through it?" Claire's hands were flat on the table. "Yes," she said. "That's why I ran." The room was quiet for a moment. Victor, in the corner, uncrossed his arms and crossed them again and looked at the wall. Ryan looked at the floor. "We're going to need you in Phoenix," Alvarez said, "for a debrief and formal statement. Today if possible, tomorrow at the latest. We're going to move fast on this now that we have the documentation. We need to get ahead of them before they realize what's been transferred." "I understand," Claire said. "I'm also going to ask you," Alvarez said, her voice shifting slightly into a register that was less official, "about your safety going forward. Once this becomes a formal federal case, which it will within hours of you making your statement, the network's ability to operate against you changes. They lose the cover. They lose the patience. Their priority becomes their own survival, not yours." She paused. "That doesn't mean the risk disappears immediately." "How long?" Claire asked. "Realistically, the first 72 hours are the most sensitive. After the initial arrest, which will happen fast, we have warrants pending on 6 individuals that this documentation now makes airtight. The calculus changes for them and..." Coming after you becomes a liability rather than an asset. She paused again. I want to be honest with you. I'm not going to promise certainty I can't provide. I appreciate that, Claire said, and Ryan heard in her voice that she genuinely did. She had been surrounded for months by uncertainty that was dressed up as something else. Plain honesty, even when it contained hard things, was a relief by comparison. Alvarez looked around the room, at Victor, at Ryan, at the broken door propped shut with a chair. We'll get a secure location arranged for tonight, she said, for everyone who needs it. She stood, extended her hand again to Claire. We're going to take good care of this, Ms. Bennett. I want you to know that. Claire shook her hand. I know, she said. I've been watching your work for 3 weeks. I chose you for a reason. Something moved across Alvarez's face that was not quite a smile but had the same warmth in it. Then let's go make some arrests, she said. She moved toward the door. Her agents followed. The tech specialist closed her laptop. The room compressed into motion. The specific productive bustle of a plan moving from preparation into execution. Victor unfolded himself from the corner and came to stand beside Claire. Ryan watched them, father and daughter, standing close, not touching, both looking at the door Alvarez had just walked through. Side by side, they looked alike in a way Ryan hadn't noticed before. The same set of the jaw, the same particular quality of stillness when they were thinking. Phoenix, Victor said. Phoenix, Claire confirmed. I'll drive you. I know you will, she said. She glanced at him sideways, and there was something in the glance that was complicated and old and deep. The specific look between two people who have been hurting each other from opposite sides of the same love for a long time and are in the early stages of deciding to stop. Dad? Yeah, he said. I'm not. She stopped. I'm going to need some time. To be angry, you understand? Yes, he said. And I know you know that Luis had reasons, she said. I know it wasn't simple. I don't want you to think I'm putting it all on you, but I need some time to put it where it belongs before I can. She paused. Before things are normal between us again. There's no timeline, Victor said. His voice had the specific stripped-down quality of a man who has removed everything that isn't true. Whatever you need, I'll be there. Claire nodded, then she turned to Ryan. And he realized in the second before she spoke that he had been watching this whole scene with a detached observation of someone who considers himself peripheral to the central story, and that he had been wrong about that, because the way she was looking at him now was not the way anyone looks at a peripheral person. You need to see a doctor, she said. He blinked. I saw a doctor. I was in the hospital for... You've been using that shoulder all morning, she said with the precision of someone who has been watching when she appeared not to be. I saw you hit the doorframe when my father made that turn. I saw your face. My face was fine, he said. Your face was doing the thing people's faces do when they're pretending to be fine, she said. I know that face. I've been making it for 4 months. Victor, without turning around, made a sound that might have been the very beginning of a laugh, immediately controlled. Ryan looked at Claire. She looked back at him with the particular steady directness she had been directing at him since the hospital room. The same look that had been measuring him for something he hadn't had a name for and was still measuring him. Okay, he said. I'll see a doctor. In Phoenix, she said. I was going to go home. You're coming to Phoenix, she said. It was not a question. It was not a request. It was the statement of someone who had made a decision and was informing him of it, delivered in a tone that had enough warmth in it to make the firmness feel like something other than a demand. Ryan looked at her for a moment. All right, he said. Phoenix. Something settled in her expression. One small degree of the remaining tension releasing. Good, she said. They left Seco Wells in convoy. Victor's truck, the 2 federal vehicles. Ryan in the passenger seat of the truck because Claire had decided to ride with her father and had also decided, apparently, that Ryan should not be driving with one functional arm. He hadn't argued. He was running out of the specific energy that arguing required. And besides, she wasn't wrong. He called his father from the truck. Robert answered on the second ring. Ryan? Hey, Dad, I'm going to Phoenix. I'll explain everything tonight. A pause. Are you in one piece? In piece? More or less, another pause. Is the girl all right? She's all right. His father was quiet for a moment. All right, he said. There's leftover chili in the fridge. I'll be fine. I know you will, Ryan said. I'll call when I get there. Ryan, his father's voice shifted. The specific shift Ryan had learned to recognize over 32 years. Robert Walker getting to the thing he actually wanted to say. I've been thinking about what you did in the diner. Dad, I'm not going to make a speech about it, Robert said. You know I don't do that. I just want you to know that. He stopped, breathed. Your mother would have been proud. She would have been terrified, and she would have lectured you for an hour, and then she would have been so proud she couldn't stand it. A pause. That's all. Drive safe. Ryan held the phone for a second after his father hung up. He put it in his pocket, looked out the window at the desert going by. Didn't say anything. In the back seat, he was dimly aware of Claire's voice, low, talking to her father. The conversation was quiet enough that he couldn't make out the words, and he wasn't trying to. He let it be the sound it was. Two people relearning the particular language of each other after a long silence. And he looked at the desert and thought about his mother, who had been gone for 11 years now, and who had used to say, when Ryan was small and brought home stray animals and broken things and kids who needed somewhere to sit, "You've got a big heart, baby. Just make sure it doesn't get you killed." I thought she would have approved of the outcome, if not entirely of the methodology. They reached Phoenix at 2:15 in the afternoon. Alvarez's office was in the federal building downtown. The process that followed was long and procedural and necessary. Claire's formal statement, the authentication of the documentation, the chain of custody procedures for the physical evidence, the technical verification of the digital file. Ryan sat in a waiting area outside the room where Claire was giving her statement for the first hour. Then Victor appeared from somewhere and sat beside him, and they sat together in the plastic chairs of the federal building waiting area and said very little. After a while, Victor said, "She doesn't know you." Ryan looked at him. "What?" "Claire," Victor said. "She doesn't know you, not really. She knew you for 40 minutes in a diner. She knows what you did. She knows what you've done since." He paused. "But she doesn't know who you are on an ordinary day. What your life looks like. What you care about when no one is testing your character." Ryan looked at him steadily. "Okay," he said. "I'm not—" Victor stopped. Tried again. "I'm not warning you," he said. "I'm not doing the father thing. That's not— She's a grown woman and she makes her own decisions, and God knows she's proved she can take care of herself." He paused. "I'm saying she is going to need ordinary days after this. A lot of them. The adrenaline runs out, and what's underneath it is going to need time and space, and—" He stopped again. "She's going to need to be somewhere quiet for a while." Ryan thought about his shop, the smell of steel and grease, the highway outside, the particular quiet of Ridgecrest at 10 at night. "Yeah," he said. "She doesn't know you on ordinary days," Victor said again. "No," Ryan agreed. "She doesn't." "I'm curious whether she'll want to," Victor said. And the way he said it, the directness of it, stripped of everything except the honest question, was the most human thing he had said since he sat on the grease-stained stool in Ryan's shop. Ryan looked at the door of the room where Claire was giving her statement. He thought about her voice on the phone that morning. "I'm so tired of running." He thought about the laugh that had surprised her in the desert. He thought about the note, 4 words on a folded piece of paper, still in his jacket pocket. "I think she'll want to find out," Ryan said. Victor was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. They didn't speak again for a while. At 4:40, Alvarez came out of the room and walked directly to Victor. She stopped in front of him and looked at him with the frank, unperforming directness she had aimed at everyone since Seco Wells. "The first warrants executed at 3:50, she said. 4 individuals in custody, 2 more locations being moved on now." She paused. "There will be a statement to the media within the hour. Once that happens, the shape of this changes. It becomes public. The network's priority becomes containment of the legal damage, not pursuit of the evidence." She paused again. "I want to be clear that this is not the end of the process. There will be a long legal proceeding. Claire will need to testify. There will be a period of time during which security considerations remain active." "I understand," Victor said. "But the active threat, the immediate operational threat against Claire's safety, changes materially once those warrants are public." She looked at him steadily. "Your daughter is safe, Mr. Blackwood. Not absolutely and not permanently yet, but today in this building, in this city, she is safe." Victor Blackwood sat in a plastic federal building chair and took that information in. Ryan watched him take it in. He watched this man, who had spent decades as the immovable object in every room he walked into, whose authority was physical and absolute, and never performed because it never had to be. Take in the words "your daughter is safe" and do something with them that required the specific private effort of a person holding something enormous very carefully. "Thank you," Victor said. His voice was steady. "Thank her," Alvarez said and glanced toward the room where Claire still was. She built this case herself. She protected it herself. She ran for 4 months to keep it intact. She looked back at Victor. Whatever choices led to her needing to run, the bravery of the running was entirely hers. A pause that was not comfortable and was not meant to be. "Yes," Victor said. "I know." Alvarez nodded. She looked at Ryan. "Dr. Reeves, our medical contact, will see you in 20 minutes. Exam room B, end of the corridor." She said it the way she said everything, like information that had been arranged and would now happen. "Claire asked me to make sure you actually went." Ryan felt something that might have been amusement. "She did?" "3 times, Alvarez said, with the very corner of a smile. "She's persistent." "I've noticed," Ryan said. Alvarez walked back toward the room. Ryan went to exam room B, and Dr. Reeves, a compact, efficient man who reminded Ryan faintly of Dr. Osei in the economy of his movements, looked at the shoulder, said, "You've been using this," in the tone of someone who has already known the answer for 20 minutes, and redressed it with more care than Ryan had given it in the past 24 hours, and told him in plain terms what rest actually meant as a concept and how long recovery would realistically take if Ryan chose to observe it. Ryan listened. He folded the information and put it in the same place he put all inconvenient information, the accurate, honest part of his brain that knew the truth even when he didn't plan to fully act on it. "The person who made the appointment for you," Dr. Reeves said, finishing the dressing. "She also said to tell you that if you don't follow the recovery instructions, she'll personally drive to Ridgecrest and hide all your tools." Ryan looked at him. "I'm quoting directly," Dr. Reeves said with no expression. Ryan walked back to the waiting area with his shoulder properly dressed in the absurd, disproportionate warmth of someone who has just been threatened with something trivial by a person they're glad exists in the world. Claire was out of the statement room. She was standing in the corridor with her arms crossed and her back against the wall. The same posture as the diner, the same wariness in the set of her shoulders, except that the specific quality of the fear that had inhabited that posture for 4 months was different now. Still there because fear doesn't leave overnight, it leaves in increments, the way infection clears from a wound, but different in weight. She looked up when Ryan came around the corner. "Dr. Reeves?" she said. "Done," he said. And I'm supposed to rest," he said. "Are you going to?" "I'm going to try," he said, which was the most honest answer he could give. She studied him. "That's not a yes." "No," he admitted. She made a sound, exhaled, looked at the ceiling briefly, then back at him. "How's the shop?" she said. "Who's covering it while you're gone?" He blinked. He had not thought about the shop since the morning. "It's closed," he said. "It's Tuesday. It's fine." "You have jobs scheduled?" "Earl Hutchins Harley," he said, and then felt the absurdity of saying that sentence in the corridor of a federal building in Phoenix, on the day when 4 men were in federal custody because of evidence that had been transported in a gray canvas bag through a diner parking lot. His transmission. It was already 6 hours late. "Call him," Claire said. "Tell him you had a family emergency." Ryan opened his mouth to say something, and then decided not to, because what he had almost said was that Earl Hutchins would understand because this was all going to be on the news within the hour anyway. And if Earl Hutchins heard it on the news before Ryan called him, that was a problem that could be solved later. "Okay," he said. She looked at him with the look that he had been receiving since she had met him. The measuring one, the one that was taking account of something she kept not quite finishing taking account of. "Ryan," she said. "Yeah," he said. "I want to say something, and I need you to not deflect it with something practical," she said. "Can you do that?" He thought about that honestly. "I can try," he said. She uncrossed her arms, held them at her sides, which he understood by now was Claire's version of being open, the deliberate choice to not hold herself together just for a moment. "You didn't have to do any of this," she said. "Not from the beginning and not any step after the beginning. The diner, the hospital, the home, The phone call, Sacco Wells. She stopped. No one would have blamed you for walking away at any point. Most people would have. I know, he said. And you didn't, she said. Not once, not for a single second. And I don't think you actually understand how rare that is. She paused. I've been around powerful men my whole life. Men with resources and authority and the ability to do enormous things. And most of them, help when the cost is low. You helped when the cost was everything. Ryan looked at her. He thought about saying something about the math, about how simple it had been in the moment, about how he didn't think of it in terms of cost. He had promised not to deflect. I'm glad you stayed in that diner, he said. I'm glad you picked that booth, and I'm glad Marie gave you coffee, and I'm glad I happened to be hungry. He paused. I mean that. Something moved through her face. The same complicated, layered thing he had watched move through it in the diner, in the hospital, in the desert. But clearer now, closer to the surface. Victor's going to offer you something, she said. He hasn't said it yet, but he will. Probably tonight. He'll frame it as settling a debt. She looked at him directly. Don't let him pay you, whatever he offers. Ryan frowned slightly. I know you weren't going to accept it, she said. I'm just telling you, it's coming, so you're not caught off guard. She paused. He doesn't know any other way to say thank you. He's working on it. But the first instinct is always, what can I give? What can I provide? What can I arrange? Her voice was the voice of a woman who had watched this for a lifetime and loved the person it came from anyway. Tell him no, it'll mean more to him than yes would. Ryan looked at her. He told me you trust me more than you trust him right now. She met his eyes. He said that? In the shop, yes. She was quiet for a moment. That was honest of him, she said. He's not usually that honest about things that cost him. He's working on it, Ryan said, using her own words back. Her mouth did something that was almost, not quite a smile. Yeah, she said. He is. She looked at the floor for a moment. It's going to take time with him. Everything with him takes time. He loves hard, and he makes big mistakes, and he owns them slow. She paused. But he owns them. She stopped. That's the thing about my father. He always eventually owns them. That's not a small thing, Ryan said. No, she agreed, it's not. The corridor was quiet around them. Somewhere down its length, a door opened and closed. Someone walked past without looking at them. The ordinary motion of a federal building in the middle of the afternoon, people moving between tasks, carrying files, living the procedural reality of a day that was, for them, simply a busy workday and not the hinge point of anyone's life. Ryan thought about the diner, the highway outside, the way the headlights of trucks passed through the dark. What are you going to do? He asked. After this, when it's done. She thought about it for a real moment. Not a quick answer, not a deflection, but the honest consideration of a question she had probably not allowed herself to think about because thinking about after required believing there would be one. I don't know, she said. I haven't let myself plan past the evidence, past getting it to the right place. She paused. I know I don't want to be an accountant for a while. I know I want to be somewhere quiet, somewhere that has, she stopped. I don't know what I want it to have. I just know I want to feel normal again, whatever that looks like. Ryan thought about his shop, the water heater making that sound, his father eating chili from the fridge, Route 17 at 10 at night. He thought about what Victor had said. She's going to need ordinary days. He thought about what he had said in return. He didn't say any of it now. Not because it wasn't true, but because now wasn't the time for it. And he had always been, at his core, a man who understood that some things needed time to set before they could bear weight. You'll figure it out, he said. You're good at figuring things out under pressure. The no-pressure versions should be easier. She laughed. The real one. The one that surprised her. Victor appeared at the end of the corridor. He walked towards them with the specific purpose of a man who has been given information and is now in the process of doing something with it. He stopped in front of Ryan. He looked at him the way he had looked at him in the shop, the measuring, careful, flint-colored assessment. And Ryan could see him arriving at the thing Claire had predicted. I want to, Victor started. No, Ryan said. Victor stopped. Whatever it is, Ryan said, not unkindly. No. Victor looked at him. The expression on his face went through several things in quick succession: surprise, the instinct to press, the recognition that pressing would be the wrong move, and then, slow and real, something that was not comfortable for him but was genuine: respect. She warned you, Victor said. She knows you, Ryan said. Victor glanced at Claire, who was looking at the ceiling with the expression of someone who has correctly predicted an event and is allowing the other parties to reach the conclusion she already occupied. All right, Victor said. He looked back at Ryan. All right. A pause. My daughter trusts you, Victor said. I've told you that. What I haven't told you is that I trust you, and I want you to know. He stopped, looked for the words with the deliberateness of a man navigating territory without a map. I want you to know that those are not the same thing, and I don't give either of them easily. Ryan looked at him. I know, he said. I know you know, Victor said. I'm telling you anyway, because you deserve to hear it said plainly. He paused. You're a good man, Ryan Walker. The kind that doesn't need to be told it, which is the only kind it actually means anything to say it to. Ryan held his gaze. He did not deflect. He did not make it smaller or simpler or more manageable with a practical observation. He let it be what it was, a man who led hard and loved hard and made big mistakes, telling a truth that cost him something, in the corridor of a federal building in Phoenix on a Tuesday afternoon that had not ended yet. Thank you, Ryan said. Victor nodded. The three of them stood in the corridor for a moment, the mechanic, the accountant, the biker, in the specific, unlikely configuration that 4 days and one impossible choice had built between them. And Ryan thought, with the clarity that comes to a person in moments they will carry for a long time. This is what it looks like. When things work out right, it doesn't look the way you expect it to. It looks like three people in a hallway, tired and alive and looking at each other. It looks like this. At 6:17, Alvarez came out and told them the media statement had been released. The first 6 arrests were confirmed. The network's primary financial infrastructure had been frozen by court order. 2 of the 6 arrested were cooperating with the investigators. It's moving, she said, with the controlled satisfaction of someone watching years of work become action. Fast, the way we wanted. She looked at Claire. How are you? Relieved, Claire said, precise, honest, and exhausted, and she paused, and relieved. That covers it, Alvarez said. We have a secure location arranged for tonight. All 3 of you, if that works. It works, Victor said. Ryan called his father from the corridor. Robert answered on the first ring this time. It's going to be on the news, Ryan said. A pause. Is it? 4 arrests so far. It's a trafficking network. The woman from the diner, Claire, she documented it. That's what the shooting was about. Another pause. A longer one. Is she all right? Yes, sir. And you? Yes, sir. Good. A beat. Ryan? Yeah. I'm going to need the whole story when you get back, Robert said. All of it. Don't leave the good parts out. Ryan looked at the door of the room where Alvarez's team was still working, where 4 months of running had been converted into something that would outlast the fear and the danger and the late-night parking lots and the cold diner coffee. I won't, he said. I promise. He hung up. Claire appeared beside him. She had her jacket back on, her laptop bag over one shoulder. The gray canvas bag, now empty of its contents, handed over to Alvarez and formally receded. Still over the other, out of habit. She looked like someone who had been running a very long race and has just crossed the finish line and has not yet fully understood that they can stop. Ready? She said. He looked at her. She was asking about the secure location, the next practical step, the next room, the next night of managing what remained of the danger. But he heard it as something larger. The way a question asked about one thing sometimes means something about another. Ready? He said. She nodded once. They walked out of the corridor together into the ordinary motion of the building, carrying between them the particular knowledge of people who have been through something specific and will carry it differently. Not as damage, but as the kind of thing that reshapes a person quietly, permanently, into someone slightly more complete than they were before. Victor was already at the elevator, holding the door. Ryan stepped in. The doors closed. The building hummed around them, going about its ordinary business, indifferent to the extraordinary weight of the day that had just passed through it. And Ryan stood between the man with the death's head on his chest and the woman with 4 months of running behind her and thought with the quiet certainty of a man who understands that some things, once fixed, stay fixed. It's done. It actually happened. It's done. Outside, somewhere in the city, a warrant was being served on a seventh individual. Somewhere documents were being reviewed and charges were being drawn, and the machinery of consequence was turning on the people who had spent 6 years moving human beings across state lines and 4 months chasing a woman through the desert to prevent anyone from finding out. And in a federal building elevator in Phoenix, Arizona, a mechanic from Ridgecrest stood next to a woman he had known for less than a week and felt a particular, undramatic, completely real sensation of having done the right thing. All the way through. The secure location was a house on the northwest edge of Phoenix that belonged, as far as Ryan could tell, to no one in particular. The kind of place that existed to be temporarily useful and asked no questions. He slept in a real bed for the first time since the hospital and woke at 5:40 in the morning with his shoulder aching and his mind already moving, the way it always moved when there was unfinished work. He lay still for a moment and took inventory. The arrests, the documentation, Alvarez's team moving through the night, Victor's people rotating outside, Claire in the room across the hall. Finally, in a place where sleep was something she could allow herself without one ear always on the door. He thought, it's not over, but the shape of it has changed. That was the honest assessment. The network wasn't dismantled in a day. Legal proceedings took months, sometimes years. There would be testimony and depositions in the long procedural grind of consequence moving through institutional channels. There would still be people out there who knew Claire's name and had reasons to resent what she had done. But the active hunt was over. The patient men in dark sit-ins, the triangulated phone calls, the 4-month compression of fear into survival. That part was done. Alvarez had said it plainly the night before, and Alvarez was not a woman who said things she didn't mean. The calculus changes for them. Coming after you becomes a liability. Ryan got up, found the kitchen, made coffee the way he always made it, strong, no ceremony, and sat at the table in the early morning, quiet, and thought about Ridgecrest. He thought about Earl Hutchins' Harley, still sitting half-finished in the shop. He thought about the water heater. He thought about his father at the kitchen table with his heart medication and his chili and the television he fell asleep in front of. I thought about Route 17 at 10 at night and the way the headlights of passing trucks looked like answers moving through the dark towards somewhere else. He heard footsteps, light ones. Claire appeared in the doorway, already dressed, hair down, looking like someone who had slept for the first time in a long time and was still slightly surprised by it. "You made coffee," she said. "I make coffee," he said. "It's what I do in the morning." She poured a cup and sat across from him. Not across the way she had sat in the diner booth, not with the wall at her back and her eyes on the door. Just across, the ordinary across of two people sharing a kitchen table. He noticed the difference. He didn't say anything about it. They drank their coffee in the early morning quiet. Outside somewhere, one of Victor's men was doing a perimeter check. The world was going about its business. 6 more arrests overnight, Claire said. "Alvarez sent me a message at 4. "I know," Ryan. "I heard your phone." She looked at him. "You were awake at 4? "I was awake at 4, he said. She wrapped both hands around her mug. It was the same gesture she had used in the diner. Both hands holding onto something warm. But different now in the way everything was different now. Not clutching, just holding. "My father wants to meet with you today," she said, "before we leave for wherever we go next." "I know," Ryan said. She looked at him. "He told you?" "No, but I know." She almost smiled. Almost. "He's going to try again," she said. "The offer. Even after you said no." "Probably," Ryan said. "He doesn't take no easily." "I've noticed." Ryan looked at his coffee. "I'll tell him no again. And then he'll respect it," she said. "Eventually. He always respects things that hold up under pressure. It just takes a second application of pressure for him to understand that the thing is going to hold." Ryan looked at her. "Is that what you do? With him? Apply second pressure?" "I apply third and fourth pressure," she said dryly. "He's my father." He laughed. A real one, unexpected, the kind that happens before a person decides whether to let it happen. She smiled at the sound of it, fully this time, and it changed her face in a way he hadn't seen yet. Not the almost smile, not the controlled warmth, something completely open. Something that had been there underneath everything, but hadn't had room to come out until now. He thought, there she is. That's who she is when she's not running. He didn't say it. He held it quietly and drank his coffee. Victor arrived at 8:30. He came alone, which Ryan noticed, and sat down at the kitchen table, which Ryan also noticed, because Victor Blackwood sitting at kitchen tables was still a thing that required a small adjustment of perception each time. He looked at Ryan for a moment, then at Claire, then back at Ryan. The offer stands, he said. No, Ryan said. Victor looked at him. You didn't let me finish. You were going to offer me something, Ryan said. Money, probably, or a favor, or protection going forward. An ongoing arrangement of some kind. The answer is no to all of them. Victor was quiet for a moment. What if I'm not offering any of those things? Ryan paused. I want to offer you something else, Victor said. His voice was different from the shop, from the parking lot, from the corridor. The specific difference of a man who has been working toward honesty and has finally arrived. I want to offer you the knowledge that I will spend the rest of my life making sure the people I lead understand what you demonstrated last Tuesday night. Ryan looked at him. What it means, Victor said, to help someone with nothing to gain. What it costs and what it's worth and why those two things are not the same calculation. He paused. I've run an organization for 23 years on the principle of loyalty to your own, and I believed in that. I still believe in versions of it. He looked at his hands on the table. But you showed me something I had forgotten. That there is a kind of loyalty that doesn't require history. That there is courage that doesn't require a reason. He looked back up at Ryan directly. I'm not offering you money. I'm telling you that what you did matters beyond what you can see, and that I intend to carry it. The kitchen was quiet. Claire was very still across the table. Ryan looked at Victor Blackwood. The death's head on his vest, the hard planes of his face, the flint eyes that had something different in them now. Not soft. Victor was never going to be soft, but different in the way a thing is different when it has been through fire and come out restructured at the molecular level. Okay, Ryan said. Victor nodded. Once. Okay, Ryan said again. He reached into his jacket pocket and put Claire's note on the table, the folded piece of paper. 4 words. This isn't over yet. He slid it toward her. She looked at it, looked at him. It is now, he said. And she picked up the paper, unfolded it, read the 4 words she had written in a hospital at 2 a.m. with a hand that was pressing too hard on the pen. She folded it back up. She put it in her own pocket. Yes, she said, it is. 2 days later, Ryan drove back to Ridgecrest. He drove alone. Victor had offered one of his men to follow. Ryan had said no, and Victor had heard the no correctly this time, without requiring a second application. The shoulder hurt on the long stretches of straight highway, but it was a manageable hurt, the kind he had learned to breathe around. And the desert was wishy and bright and indifferent in the way the desert always was. And Route 17 came up ahead of him like something he had been away from longer than 2 days. He pulled into the shop. He sat in the truck for a moment. The shop was exactly as he had left it. Earl Hutchins' Harley on the stand, the transmission half finished, the catalog open on the workbench, the parts sorted with one hand because the other had been in a sling. He had left it in a hurry and it showed. He went inside. He made a call. Earl, he said when Hutchins picked up. I'm back. I can have your bike done by Thursday. A pause. Ryan Walker, Earl said slowly. I saw the news. I know, Ryan said. You're the mechanic, Earl said. The one in the diner. Yes, sir. Another pause. A longer one. Then Earl Hutchins, 64 years old, retired postman, who had been bringing his Harleys to Ryan's shop for 9 years and complained about turnaround time approximately 100% of those 9 years, said, take whatever time you need, son. The bike's not going anywhere. Ryan stood in his shop and held the phone for a second. Thursday, he said. I'll have it done by Thursday. He hung up and got to work. His father came by at noon with a container of soup and the look of a man who has been waiting patiently for 2 days to hear the full story and has reached the end of his patience. Ryan sat on the second stool and talked. He told it all. The coffee, the 40 minutes, the math he had done in the second before he moved, the hospital, Victor in the shop, the bag in Marie's car, Seco Wells, the bathroom window, Luis and his brother, and the 8 months. Alvarez, the arrests, the corridor in the federal building, the kitchen table that morning. His father listened without interrupting, which was the greatest gift Robert Walker had ever given anyone. When Ryan finished, the shop was quiet. Robert looked at his hands, then at his son. Your mother, he said, used to say that most people spend their whole lives waiting to find out what they're made of. He paused. She said the lucky ones get a moment that shows them, and the truly lucky ones don't run from it. Ryan looked at him. You've always been truly lucky, Robert said. I just wanted you to know I know that. Ryan looked at the floor, at the engine parts, at the dirty concrete and the tools hanging in their places and the ordinary, necessary clutter of a life built around fixing broken things. He said, I'm going to go back to Phoenix next week. Alvarez's office wants a formal statement from me. Witness record. And I told Claire I'd come. He paused. She's staying in Phoenix for a while the legal process moves. His father said nothing, but Ryan could feel him not saying it, which was louder. It's not, Ryan started. I didn't say anything, Robert said. You were about to. I was going to say, Robert said mildly, that Phoenix is not that far, 4 hours, good highway the whole way, and I have enough soup to last me through the week without any help. Ryan looked at him. Go, his father said. Come back when you've done what you need to do. He paused. And if you want to bring someone with you when you come back, someone who needs somewhere quiet for a while, there's room. Ryan was quiet for a long moment. Dad, he said. Ryan, his father said, with the patience of a man who has spent 32 years being right about his son and has learned to deliver that information gently. Ryan went back to Earl Hutchins's transmission and got it done by Thursday, which was what he had promised. He drove to Phoenix the following Tuesday. He did not tell Claire he was coming. He had Alvarez's office number, and he called it from the road and gave his statement by phone. The formal witness record, the sequence of events, clean and factual. And when he was done, Alvarez said, Ms. Bennett will be here until 4 today if you wanted to pass through. She said it without inflection, which he appreciated. He parked outside the federal building at 2:15. He texted Claire, I'm outside, a pause of maybe 30 seconds. Then, why didn't you tell me you were coming? He thought about that. He typed, I wasn't sure you'd want me to. Another pause, longer. Room 4B, first elevator, 3rd floor. Bring coffee. There's nothing drinkable in this building. He found coffee 2 blocks away. He took the elevator to the 3rd floor. He knocked on the door of 4B. She opened it. She looked different from the last time he had seen her. 2 days in the same city, some sleep. The specific decompression of a person who has been in survival mode and is slowly, carefully coming out of it. Not finished. Not all the way back, but further along the road toward herself than she had been. She looked at the coffee. You actually brought it, she said. You asked for it, he said. She took it. She stepped back to let him in. The room was a small conference room, papers on the table, a laptop open, the evidence of days of procedural work. She sat down. He sat across from her. Not across the way they had sat in the diner. Not with the wall at her back and the door in her sightline. Just across. Ordinary across. She drank the coffee. He watched her drink it. Neither of them said anything for a moment, and the silence was the comfortable kind, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. 19 arrests total, she said, as of this morning. I saw, he said. He had been watching the news from Ridgecrest with his father, the two of them at the kitchen table in the morning, reading the coverage, the trafficking network, the shell companies, the financial paper trail that an accountant named Claire Bennett had reconstructed alone over 4 months while running for her life through Arizona. 2 more expected by the end of the week, she said. Good, he said. She looked at him over the coffee cup. How's your shoulder? Better, he said. I finished Earl's Harley. Against doctor's orders, she said. Mostly within them, he said. She shook her head, but the way she shook it had something in it that wasn't quite exasperation. He was learning the difference between the shakes of her head that meant, I'm frustrated, and the ones that meant something else. This was the something else. I've been thinking, she said and stopped. He waited. I've been thinking about what I said, she said. In the kitchen. About wanting somewhere quiet, somewhere that feels normal. She looked at the table, then back up at him. You described Ridgecrest to me once, in the diner. Actually, you didn't describe it, you just... You talked about your father in the shop and Route 17, and I remember thinking, she stopped again. He waited. I remember thinking that it sounded like somewhere a person could breathe, she said. Ryan looked at her steadily. He thought about his father's voice. If you want to bring someone with you when you come back. He thought about Route 17 at 10 at night, the headlights of trucks on the highway, the particular quiet of a small town that asks nothing of the people in it except that they show up. It is, he said. It's a good place to breathe. She held his gaze. The legal process is going to take a while. I'm going to be in Phoenix for most of it. She paused. But after, when I'm not needed here every day. She stopped. I'm not asking anything, she said quickly. I know you don't know me. Not really. You know me in a crisis. You don't know what I'm like when nothing is wrong. No, he agreed. I could be terrible, she said. Ordinary life terrible. I drink too much coffee. I argue about things that don't matter. I'm difficult when I'm tired. So am I, he said. She looked at him. I'm better with engines than with people, he said. I don't talk enough. I fix things instead of talking about them, and that apparently frustrates people. He paused. My water heater's been making a sound for 2 months and I keep saying I'll get to it. That's a metaphor, she said. It's also literally true, he said. She looked at him for a long moment with the measuring look that had been measuring him since the diner, that had never quite finished arriving at its conclusion. Ridgecrest, she said. When you're ready, he said. No timeline, no pressure. If you want to see what normal looks like in a town where nothing much happens. He paused. My father makes good chili. Something happened in her face. The last degree. The final millimeter of tension that had been living in her since before the diner. Since before the running. The long-held compression of a person who had been braced for a very long time against a world that had shown her repeatedly what it was capable of. That last degree released. Okay, she said, quietly, simply. Okay, he said. She looked at the coffee in her hands. Ryan, she said. Yeah. Thank you. She looked up. Not for the bullet, not for the bomb or Seco Wells or any of the specific things. She paused. For sitting down, she said, in the diner that night. For seeing that I was scared and sitting down anyway. She held his gaze. That was the thing. That was where it started. Everything that came after, it started with someone just sitting down. Ryan thought about that moment. The bell above the door, the cold cup of coffee, the woman pressed against the wall of the farthest booth, watching the door with the eyes of someone who had been running so long, she had forgotten what it felt like to sit still. He had seen someone who needed help. He had sat down. That was the whole of it. That was the sum total of the impossible mathematics of the last 10 days. A simple, ordinary choice, made without strategy or expectation. That had started a chain of events none of them could have predicted, and all of them would carry for the rest of their lives. He thought about what his mother used to say. The truly lucky ones don't run from it. He thought about Victor in the corridor. You're a good man, Ryan Walker, the kind that doesn't need to be told it. I thought about his father at the kitchen table, with his soup and his patience in the room he had offered without making a performance of offering it. I thought about Luis in the back of a sedan, finally setting down the weight he had been carrying alone for 8 months. He thought about the people who had been moved through a network for 6 years, whose names he would never know, whose faces he had never seen, who existed somewhere on the other side of a gray canvas bag in a waterproof envelope, and a woman who had looked at a set of numbers and understood what they meant and refused. Refused at every turn, at every moment when the calculation made stopping seem rational, refused to pretend she hadn't. I thought, we are none of us the person we think we are before the moment arrives. We only find out who we are in the second we decide. He had decided in a diner on a Tuesday night, with his father's medication in a paper bag, in an empty stomach, and no particular plan beyond a grilled cheese sandwich. He had sat down. Everything else had followed from that. Claire was looking at him across the ordinary across of a conference room table, with the coffee warming her hands in the last of the running, finally actually behind her, and Ryan Walker, ordinary mechanic, quiet man, the kind of person who fixed broken things not because it was dramatic, but because it was what needed to be done, looked back at her and understood, with the complete and settled certainty of a man who has arrived somewhere he didn't know he was going. He had sat down in the right place on the right night at the exact right moment. And that single, simple, unremarkable choice had changed everything worth changing. He would do it again without hesitation, without calculation, without a single moment.